Morning, everybody. It's 7 o'clock. On today's programme, breaking news: one of Russia's most senior generals killed in an explosion in Moscow.
Also ahead, renewed calls for the Prime Minister to take a tougher line on China after a suspected spy with links to Prince Andrew is unmasked.
And driving home for Christmas, well, the AA tells us the best days to travel and when to avoid.
Probably all of them. It's Tuesday, the 17th of December. The Russian general in charge of the country's nuclear troops is killed in an explosion. Investigators say that the bomb was hidden in an electric scooter. Also ahead, lonely this Christmas, Prince Andrew forced out of the royal family's Christmas Day celebrations amid the China spy storm. Police in Wisconsin named the suspect behind yesterday's deadly shooting at a school as a 15-year-old girl. Sky News investigates the illegal online casinos drawing in children as young as 12. And hitting the high notes, Sir Ed makes a push for Christmas #1 with his new charity single. Morning, everybody. We start with news that's broken in the last hour. One of Russia's most senior generals has been killed by an explosion in Moscow. Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov was in charge of Russia's nuclear protection forces. According to the Russian news agency TASS, a bomb was planted in an electric scooter. Let's get more on that, should we now? Laura Bonduck is standing by. Hi, Laura, tell us more.
Well, it might not be a name you've heard of, but he certainly was a leading military figure in Russia, head of the country's nuclear defence forces. The bomb went off this morning outside a residential apartment block, and it was an audacious attack. This was just 4 miles southeast of the Kremlin, very close to the centre of Moscow. The Russian authorities say they're now investigating what's gone on here. It's thought that the device was planted in an electric scooter. But like I say, this was a brazen attack as those investigations carry on now to find out what happened. These sorts of attacks don't happen very often. Back in July, a car bomb exploded, killing an officer from Russia's military intelligence. And then back in May 2023, there was another attack on a pro-war blogger who was seriously injured on an attack on Russia's foreign ministry, that blaming at that point Ukraine. And then also in August, the daughter of an ultra-nationalist was killed in a bomb attack. That's in August 2022. So over the last 3 or so years, we have seen these sorts of attacks. Like I say, investigations are now underway. But I think it is no coincidence that Igor Kirillov's role as head of nuclear protection forces is significant, because it comes at a time where Russia is talking up its nuclear threat capabilities and recently changed the rules, which meant that the threshold for a nuclear strike was set so much lower. At the moment, we don't know who's behind this attack, although clearly there will be suspicions raised amongst the Ukrainians, particularly given the fact that this particular general was convicted in the Ukrainian court for crimes against the use of chemical weapons just yesterday. So the timing of this seems particularly relevant, but at the moment it's not known who was behind this attack.
OK, for now, thank you. Government facing renewed pressure to designate China a threat to national security after an alleged Chinese spy with close links to Prince Andrew was named as Yang Tengbo. The businessman was born in China in 1974. In 2002, he came to the UK to study. He was a student at the University of York. In 2013, he was granted indefinite leave to remain. One of his roles was as founder partner of Picture Palace China, and by 2020 he was attending Prince Andrew's 60th birthday party. However, in November of 2021 he was stopped at a port under counter-terrorism laws and asked to hand over digital devices. Because of that, in March of 2023, the Home Secretary at the time, Suella Braverman, directed that he should be excluded from the UK on national security grounds. Shaman's with us this morning. Good morning. What more do we know about this guy?
Well, now that the High Court has lifted this anonymity restriction, we're now learning lots more details about Yang Tembo and what his links were to the UK. For example, the fact that he had studied here in London, he was studying languages. He then went on to study public policy at York University as well. We had initially heard of this story because of his links to Prince Andrew, the fact that Prince Andrew had invited him to a birthday party back in 2020. But there was lots of speculation about who else that Yang Tembo, also known as Chris Yang, would have had ties to. And then it was revealed that he had met former Prime Ministers, Theresa May and David Cameron at Downing Street receptions. Now it's spiralled into a wider conversation, really, not just about his ties to Prince Andrew, the fact that Prince Andrew may not be invited to a Christmas party as a result of this, but also the wider ramifications about the links between the UK and China and whether or not there needs to be more stringent rules, really, and regulations to avoid things like this happening in future. So now ministers are urging the government to implement this foreign influence registration scheme. It would mean that any person that has links to a foreign government would have to declare that, and if they didn't, they could face criminal prosecution. And the parliamentarians that want this introduced are asking for the government to place China on what they're calling an enhanced tier, which would mean greater scrutiny for anyone working for the Chinese government operating here in the UK. But this is not straightforward, is it, Kay? Especially when you have trade deals which are ongoing between our government and the Chinese government, with Trump coming into the US speaking very strongly about his views on China as well. It means that the government are going to have to walk this very tight rope now because there is clearly some concerns over the information that those links to China are able to gather here in the UK, but we do need trade as well. Yeah. So this is something that's going to rumble on, especially if more names are then linked to this Yang Tembo as well.
OK. We'll be putting it to Bridget Phillipson. Actually, 8:15 today rather than 7:15. Thanks very much.
Listening.
Thank you. Great. Father and stepmother Osara Sharif, excuse me, are due to be sentenced today for the murder of the 10-year-old girl. In the wake of her death, the government will unveil a new bill to remove the right to home education and demand school attendance if a child is living in an unsafe environment. As I said, Bridget Phillipson joining us just after 8 o'clock this morning. School shootings in the US are sadly a nearly daily occurrence, but a school shooting carried out by a girl is much more rare. Detectives in Wisconsin have identified the person who opened fire at a school yesterday, killing a teacher and a teenage student, as 15-year-old Natalie Rupnow. Our US correspondent Mark Stone has more.
The school is called Abundant Life, and yet just days before Christmas, it is the latest scene of America's darkest challenge. The young girl believed to have been responsible for the nation's latest school shooting is 15 years old and a student at the school, where she would shoot teachers and fellow students.
The shooter has now been identified as 15-year-old Natalie Rupnow, who went by the name Samantha. She was a student at the school, and evidence suggests she died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
It was just before 11 a.m. when the first calls came in.
A shooter is advising someone was shot.
Initially, confusion.
I'm hearing multiple things, possibly one deceased, maybe 6 people injured, at least 2 shot.
But quickly, some clarity.
Copy. Let's make this an active shooter incident.
And confirmation that it was over.
Shooter is down.
Then the grim routine that feels in this country to be so tragically familiar. The eyewitnesses with reflections that could be from any of America's mass shootings.
We saw a few guys with long guns. They went in the school with a dog. And then a little later on, I saw groups of kids coming out of the school.
And the parents forced again to wonder if their children were among the dead or injured.
My sister called me on the phone. She's like, there is an active shooter at the school. She had like an inside source kind of tell her. And I just bolted out, drove down here. I called my husband, and he made his way over here.
Beyond the familiarity with all this, though, each mass shooting has its uniquely tragic twists. Here, it is the news that the first 911 call came in from a child, calling to report shooting and killing in their own school.
At 10:57 a.m., a second grade student called 911 to report a shooting had occurred at school. Don't let that soak in for a minute. A second grade student called 911 at 10:57 a.m. to report a shooting at school.
A teacher and a student are dead, along with the young woman who killed them. And of those wounded, 2 are critical. Now, as investigators searched a property overnight, the questions come. What was the motive? How was the 9mm pistol acquired? Police do have leads, and they are talking to her parents. There have been nearly 500 mass shootings in America this year. 1,347 children under 18 have died in 2024 from gunshot wounds. Now, another American community is reeling. Mark Stone, Sky News.
Rest of today's top stories for you now. Here's Gareth. Morning.
Good morning. Yes, we're going to start with the situation in Chile because with regards to the hurricane there. That's because a senator from the French islands of Mayotte has told Sky News the residents are starving with no food, water or power following the wake of Cyclone Chile. Rescue efforts continuing with extra boots now on the ground. Officials, though, conceding it will take days to know the total number of people killed. Rachel Venables has more.
Travelling across this small island, French soldiers take in the devastation. Homes shredded, trees flattened, even shipping containers scattered by the ferocious winds. It was the strongest cyclone to hit the French islands of Mayotte in nearly a century. Neighbourhoods made of shacks and huts didn't stand a chance. The death toll is expected to be catastrophic. But those who survived the storm are now in a race against time for life's most basic essentials.
We have no light, no water, no communication, and since yesterday, no food. The population is starving, I will say, and suffering now.
In Réunion, France loaded military aircraft with aid. Lines of firefighters and rescue teams flying out to this impoverished overseas department, which is governed from Paris. President Macron plans to visit in the coming days. His interior minister has seen the destruction firsthand.
It is very clear the island is totally devastated. The housing, which is precarious housing, the banger for those who don't know the name, or the slums, there is nothing left. It will take days and days to get a solid assessment of the human toll.
Cyclone Chido also wreaked havoc on neighbouring Mozambique, where aid agencies fear up to 2 million people will be affected. Mayotte was already France's poorest region. Now, as they count and mourn their dead, the island's residents face a future that is desperate and uncertain. Rachel Venables, Sky News.
Time to bring you up to speed on some of the day's other top stories. Now, Thames Water hoping to win approval at the High Court later this morning for a £3 billion emergency loan to stop it running out of cash in the spring. Protests expected outside the court. The company is under pressure to address growing costs and complaints over sewage outflows. Meanwhile, the watchdog has ruled the government and regulators broke the law by allowing water firms to discharge sewage into rivers and seas outside of exceptional circumstances. If steps aren't taken to rectify the situation, the government and regulators could face court action. Taxi and ambulance drivers are less likely to develop Alzheimer's disease due to memorising routes. That's according to new research. Researchers believe it is due to how heavily cognitive spatial memory is used whilst learning and remembering routes. Chris Kamara will return to TV on Boxing Day, 2 years after stepping away from broadcasting due to a rare neurological disorder. The Sky Sports pundit will report on the Premier League match between Nottingham Forest and Tottenham. Posting on X, he said he's back after having the best phone call ever.
Now, Sky News investigation has found that illegal online casinos are using the popular video game Roblox, is that how I pronounce it?
Roblox, but
close enough, to try to entice children as young as 10, 12, in fact, into gambling. We'll get more on that in just a moment with Mickey, but first, here's her report.
It's a huge digital playground, and if you're not hanging out in it, your kids probably are. Nearly 39 million children play Roblox every day. It's one of the most popular video games in the world. But now, a Sky News investigation has uncovered a network of illegal online casinos like Bloxmoon, with its cartoon graphics and bright colours, preying on underage Roblox users and encouraging them to gamble tens of thousands of pounds on their sites. Behind the green LED lights and oversized facial expressions is a teenage boy. Robert, not his real name, is wearing a mask to conceal his identity. He's 16 now, but he was just 14 when he started gambling on these illegal casinos in the US. He thinks he's gambled around £150,000 in total.
I would do small bits at first, and that would gradually go up and up. I'd get the adrenaline being on call with my friends, just deciding what we're going to do, deciding how we're going to triple it, double it.
RBLX Wild and Bloxmoon are two illegal sites that the Gambling Commission has taken action against after we brought them to their attention.
At the end of the day, these illegal casino operators, they are criminals. They're supported by criminal gangs and they're part of the criminal underworld. And it's really important that all of us play our part in trying to frustrate them.
Roblox is popular. It's got 80 million daily users and 42% of those are under 13, according to Roblox. It's free to play. But if users want to buy anything in the Roblox world, as you would want to in real life, it'll cost them, or their parents, Robux. That's the currency that's used here. But children are using it to gamble on casino sites like this one, Bloxmoon. Our investigation focused on this website as well as two other casinos, Blox Flip and RBLX Wild. Their users are encouraged to seek out the unlicensed sites through adverts from influencers on social media. In the case of Bloxmoon, for example, users log in with their Roblox credentials. Then they bet their Robux on games like slots or blackjack. They can then withdraw any winnings, either as Robux or as cryptocurrency, which can easily be changed into cash. Roblox told us the websites in question are in no way endorsed or authorised by Roblox. We've taken numerous steps to disrupt their activity, which violates our terms of use. We have a dedicated group focused on identifying potentially fraudulent activity on Roblox, and we work collaboratively with law enforcement authorities where possible to pursue the owners of such websites. Our efforts have been met with some success, but we would welcome further law enforcement action and vigilance from web hosting providers to shut down sites like this. We approached the three casinos for comment, but didn't get a reply. As action against them ramps up, is the end coming for these opportunistic gambling rings?
Tell me a bit more about this story, Mickey. Good morning.
Morning. Yeah, so it's been a really interesting investigation, especially when you look at the scale of this problem. So these sites, we focused on three, but there are multiple across the internet. The three that we focused on are getting millions of people visiting them every month, tens of millions of dollars changing hands every year. And we're talking about really young kids being able to play this. We were able to gamble with an under-13s account, which shows you kind of how dangerous this could be. And yet, despite all of that, the Gambling Commission are having to play whack-a-mole with criminals online. So when we told them about our investigation, they took action really quickly. They got the sites down really quickly, but then 36 hours later, they started popping back up again. And when we spoke to people like Ian Duncan-Smith about this, who's leading the parliamentary group on gambling harms, he said that this was evidence that the gambling regulations aren't fit for purpose now, that they were built around kind of bricks and mortar casinos, and they're not fit for this kind of online world of illegal gambling. And of course, the problem then is, well, what do you do if you've got all of these children who are able to access unregulated, illegal casinos and gamble these huge sums of money? Well, the onus sort of falls on parents. So we spoke to YGAM, which is this young people's gambling charity. And they told us that if parents are really worried about this kind of thing, there are kind of steps that you can take. So you can put restrictions, sometimes on your internet provider, you can put restrictions in on what kind of content your kids can see. If you've done that and that's not really worked, it's then about just talking to your children. So it's about explaining, first of all, that the national rules say this is illegal. These are underage gamblers gambling on underage sites, and they may not realise that it's illegal. But also saying, if you have got into trouble with this and you're kind of feeling like you're losing control of it, that you can come and talk to me as a parent, which is a lot of pressure on parents to deal with this at the moment, but there should be more rules coming into place in the future to deal with this.
Amazing. Thanks very much indeed for your investigation. Thank you. More online, of course, as well from Mickey. Now, let's take a look at this morning's front pages for you. The Eye says the case of the alleged spy named as Yang Tengbo has prompted a toughening up of surveillance on China's suspects. The Sun concludes that Andrew has effectively been stuffed at Christmas, given the royal cold shoulder. Alleged Chinese spy linked to Prince Andrew is named. That's the front of The Guardian. That's not as much fun, is it? Now, the Metro steals a famous line from James Bond. The name's Yang Tengbo. Yang. Well, joining us now is Luke de Pulford, Executive Director of the Interparliamentary Alliance on China. Good to talk to you this morning. Thank you for joining us. Your thoughts on the fact that this guy has been named now, and where do we go next?
Well, we need to try to uncover the really quite scary depths of the penetration of the United Front Work Department that he belonged to. This guy was no James Bond, and he certainly wasn't a lone wolf. He was one of many hundreds of people similarly operating in the United Kingdom that have been flying under the radar for, well, at least a decade. So we need to do what we can to root them all out.
And what does that involve?
Well, it involves, first of all, naming China in the enhanced tier of the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme to actually force people like him to register as people working on behalf of a foreign state. And if they don't do that, then they will have committed an offence, and at least our intelligence and security agencies will be able to do something about them, which right now they're not really able to, because this guy didn't commit any criminal offence, as far as I can see.
How might he have managed to gain such intimate access to somebody like Prince Andrew, though?
I think the answer to that is money, unfortunately. Cold, hard cash. There is a lot of money to throw around if you're connected to the United Front Work Department and its various influence arms of the Chinese Communist Party. If you can invest a bit of money in various institutions, you can win influence. And we're seeing that happening all over the country, unfortunately. The Intelligence and Security Committee report on China last year said that China had penetrated every sector of the UK economy. And the principal vehicle for it doing that is the United Front Work Department. So it's cold, hard cash is probably the simple answer to that question.
And how will all of this impact on our relationship with China? We know that the Prime Minister has met with the Chinese leader previously and is I think it's Rachel Reeves who's going at the beginning of next year.
Well, I think the answer to that is probably not enough, because it looks as if the Prime Minister and certainly the government at the moment is insistent on resetting relations with China and trying to do what it can to go cap in hand to Beijing to win extra trade and investment in the hope of economic opportunity and prosperity for the UK. And that's really unfortunate because we believe, certainly those of us who are closer to trying to confront the China challenge, we believe that that's a strategic and long-term mistake. It's going to disadvantage us. It's going to make us heavily dependent upon China. If there's escalation around Taiwan, it's going to put us in a more disadvantageous position economically. And it's also going to increase Beijing's leverage over us. In fact, we've already seen that play out over the Chinese embassy in the meeting between Xi Jinping and Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer said to him that after their initial phone call, when he'd just become Prime Minister, when Xi Jinping had said, we want to get this embassy problem sorted, Keir Starmer admitted that he had then called in the embassy application so that the government would make the decision rather than the council. So that shows you already leverage is being exerted by China. That's only going to get worse if we go headlong into deeper dependency upon them.
But surely we do need to trade with China, don't we?
We need to trade and we should engage. I don't know anybody reasonable who says we shouldn't engage with China, but we have to engage with our eyes open. We have to engage with the Chinese Communist Party as it really is, not as we might have hoped it to be in 2001 when they joined the World Trade Organization, or in, I don't know, 2010 when we had this ill-fated Cameron Osborne golden era. That's not where we are anymore. It's pretty clear that the Chinese Communist Party is incredibly repressive at home, extremely aggressive and assertive abroad. It's economically coercing different countries. It's meting out massive human rights abuses. And it wants to upend and redesign the international system in its own image. We can't allow that to happen. And at the moment, it doesn't really, I mean, we certainly don't feel as if we have politicians who are seized of the extent of the problem.
OK, good to talk to you. Thanks for taking the time. Thank you. Love your Christmas tree.
Thank you.
Thank you. Merry Christmas. Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you here on Sky News. How will the Kremlin respond after the killing of a top Russian general in Moscow? We'll get the thoughts of security and defence analyst Tobias Elwood. Imagine going into anaphylactic shock after kissing a boy. I'll be speaking to a filmmaker who's telling her story to raise awareness. And the AA will join us live to give best advice on driving home for Christmas.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels. I've witnessed migration across Europe close up.
I'm James Matthews and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Washington, D.C. Mr. Musk, has your ignorance and ego cost Ukrainian lives? Free, wherever you get your news.
I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Why do you support Vladimir Putin, Mr. Seagal?
I'm Conor Gillis, Sky's Scotland correspondent. Sky News, the full story first.
Migrants risk their lives climbing aboard these trains in search of a dream, the United States.
It's really dangerous. They often get robbed on this train.
They suffer a lot, by police, cartels.
What happens to them next, we just don't know. Do you miss your mum?
With Trump coming to the presidency, how much longer will people be accommodated?
The journey you've been through, it's been very difficult at times. Has it been worth it?
See. This is a journey which goes by one name, the Beast.
We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. Greg Milam, Sky News, Manchester.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers.
We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
The most significant day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to The Breakfast Show. Coming up, how a night out nearly turned into a deadly anaphylactic shock. That to come in just a few moments. But first...
Top stories for you this morning. One of Russia's most senior generals has been killed by an explosion in Moscow. Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov was in charge of Russia's nuclear protection forces. The government is facing new pressure to designate China a threat to national security after the naming of an alleged Chinese spy with close links to the Duke of York. Detectives in Wisconsin say the attacker suspected of being behind yesterday's school shooting. These are the wrong images.
This is the guy, isn't it? This is the alleged spy.
Yes, this is H6, who's now been named as Yang Tangbao, who is alleged to have had links to Prince Andrew, the Duke of York. Let's move on to our next story. Watchdog has ruled the government and regulators broke the law by allowing water firms to discharge sewage into rivers and seas outside of exceptional circumstances.
More on our top story for you now. Tobias Elwood is with us, a security analyst, amongst other things, of course. Hi, Tobias. Great to see you, as always. Igor Kirillov killed. It was a bomb, apparently, in an e-scooter. That's the latest that we're hearing. What do you make of it all?
Well, both sides, Russia and Ukraine, know there's just 1 month left until Donald Trump returns to the White House. And that is affecting the behavior on the battleground. And in a month's time, talks are likely to start about a potential ceasefire, about a potential deal. So every opportunity is being taken to gain territory, to seek advantage, to prosecute existing plans to cause harm. And that, I think, is what we're seeing play out here. So the killing of Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov, we can only assume was done by Ukraine, is a major event, though. The removal of a senior military officer responsible for nuclear weapons, not on the battlefield in Ukraine, but in Moscow, just miles from the Kremlin. So this will be an embarrassment for Putin. He cannot hide this from the Russian people, who generally are not supportive of this war. And I'm afraid I would expect a major retaliation on the Russian side. It's interesting why this general was targeted, and it actually affects Britain to some degree, because only yesterday he was charged in Ukraine, in absentia, for authorizing the use of chemical weapons. And it's those very same use of chemical weapons that Britain has issued sanctions against this general. Russia is a signatory of the Chemical Weapons Convention, and I'm afraid it's the ugly side of battle that a lot of us assumed Russia would venture into if they started losing, or if there was a time pressure against them to gain territory before, as I say, Trump returns to the White House.
You'll have Trump.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
So sorry, Tobias. What impact do you think President Trump will have on the war in Ukraine?
I'm afraid him coming in, he's frustrated with the amount of time it's taken to get to where we are. This has been running now for almost 3 years. We, the West, I'm afraid, have not done enough to support Ukraine, and it's ended up with this stalemate. And Trump is coming in, as he did before, saying, I'm not interested in supporting these wars. I want it concluded. And so he's made it very clear. He will pull American support for the war in all its forms, whether it be direct military support or indeed otherwise. And that leaves a huge question as to whether Europe, the rest of NATO, can continue on its own, which they can't. And he said he wants to get all the stakeholders around the table. And as I stressed, this is what's going to see perhaps the end of this war in its current phase, probably some form of ceasefire agreed. I stress that this is an embarrassment for the rest of NATO. We should have prosecuted this war. We should have helped Ukraine. This is a democracy on the edge of Europe, right next to NATO, the most formidable, potent military alliance the world has ever seen. And we weren't able to put this fire out. And that's the consequence here, is what then will Russia do next? Because Russia will simply be given time and space to rearm, regroup, and advance in another part of Eastern Europe, because there's an ideological threat that he now poses to the rest of Europe. And that's the bigger challenge that I'm afraid we're still in denial about.
Let me just ask you, while I've got you, Tobias, about this alleged Chinese spy who got right to the heart of the British royal family, diplomats and politicians as well, it would seem. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't about, I know it's want to talk of it, see it as a royal story. It's not. It's actually about what China does, an ever assertive, ever aggressive China. And Russia does this as well. It's part of a grey zone war, if you like. Daily cyber attacks, espionage, intellectual property theft, and so forth, the spread of disinformation. This is what both countries are doing from afar to penetrate into our society and seek vulnerable people. I mean, there's big questions why Prince Andrew was stripped perhaps of some of the support for the royal household that could have offered better advice as to who should be allowed near him. I mean, that is a separate question. The bigger question for us is, where else has China been able to achieve this, to push people into deep in our society, in academia, in commercial interests, in other areas of politics and diplomacy? We are absent of a clear strategy on how we should handle this rising China. And until that is clarified, then I'm afraid we'll see this kind of grey zone war continue.
OK, for now, thank you. British diplomats have held talks with the leader of the Syrian rebel group's HTS in Damascus. Images posted online by the rebel group show their leader, Ahmed al-Shara, meeting several senior officials, including the UK's Special Representative for Syria, Anne Snow. The UK currently considers HTS as a terror organisation. Meanwhile, the full extent of the drug exports that bankrolled Bashar al-Assad's regime is now being revealed. Sky's international correspondent Diana Magne reports.
Now the dictator is gone, and it's these men in charge. We can show you for the first time just how the production of an amphetamine called Captagon fueled Assad's narco state. So these are all the raw materials, is that right?
Yes. This caffeine تصنع.
For years, Syria's neighbours warned about the flood of Captagon pouring out from Syria and across the Middle East, especially into the Gulf.
It's drugs.
Ah, right. OK. Quite a lot of drugs.
This is drugs.
And so this all gets crushed together and put into these small
Yes, yes. Press and small tablets. Yes, this. Plastic balls, small balls, and inside 4 tablets.
Wow.
Tablets, drugs.
How much do you think you sell this for?
1 tablet, $5.
$5.
Yes.
Tablet. So $20. It's difficult to open.
Yes.
The scale is extraordinary, especially when you think that this was just a private villa belonging to a man called Basim, a colonel in Syria's 4th Armoured Division. So this is the part where the family actually lived. The other side is just the factory. And you look at this luxury, it's pretty tacky luxury, and you think about the fact that whilst most of the people of this country were living in absolute poverty, the economy devastated by the civil war, these little capsules were literally what were keeping the Assad family and their cronies in this kind of luxury. Abu Bilal has just returned to the farm he was forced to evacuate when the villa next door was built.
This entire area belonged to the 4th Division. Not a single soul could come near here. We never knew what they were doing because we couldn't come near here. No one.
The 4th Division ran much of the Captagon trade too, under the control of Bashar's brother Maher, famously thuggish, believed to have fled Syria for Iraq and possibly now Moscow. This is another Captagon factory in a Damascus suburb. The pills hidden in electric switching systems, hundreds of thousands of them. The factory belongs to Mohammed al-Tout, but when he fled the civil war in 2014, he says Maher and his cronies moved in.
They turned my food production facility into a drug operation. I went to the relevant authorities to claim my factory back, and no one helped me.
Hardly surprising, given the revenues that Captagon was bringing in. Somewhere between $2 and $6 billion, the World Bank says. And an economy worth not much more than that. Diana Magne, Sky News, Damascus.
Now, we've all heard stories about people suffering terrible, even fatal allergic reactions from something they've eaten or drunk accidentally or unknowingly. But did you know that it can be triggered just by kissing someone? Well, actually, it happened to my next guest, Phoebe Campbell-Harris, who's now made a movie about her experience as a warning to others.
I know I should want to go. It's just not that much fun having fun when you don't want to have fun.
With us now. Good morning. Tell me what happened.
Good morning. Hi. Yes, so I made a film about. It's called A Matter of Minutes, and it is based on an experience I had when I was in Paris, and I kissed a guy who'd just eaten nuts, and I realised in that kind of moment my throat started to go, and I went into the toilet and I saw that there were hives kind of spread across my body. And I realised I was having an allergic reaction, and, you know, I had to EpiPen myself and everything, and it was fine in the end, but it kind of inspired me to, much later on in my life, because I was 18 then, now I'm 28, to write a film about it, because it was a moment where I realised that allergic reactions, the onus can't just be on the allergy sufferer, it's also on everyone else around. And even though I'd controlled everything else, I'd controlled what I'd consumed and what I drank, it was a moment where I realised it wasn't something that only I could control. So yeah, I had
Did you know
reaction.
that could happen before it happened?
No, I didn't, and especially at the time, I didn't know. I was confused. I was like, wait, how am I having this allergic reaction? But obviously in that moment, I just knew that I had to, save myself, and it was fine. But it only dawned on me later that it must have been because I'd kissed him. And so, yeah, that kind of was the inspiration behind the film.
And you want other people to realise?
Yes, exactly. That's the intention here, is to show people that anaphylaxis isn't something that can be kind of glossed over. It needs to be taken very seriously. And I wrote this film to kind of show a different side of the story, I guess, yeah.
OK, and where can we see it?
So at the moment, you can't. It's very, it's kind of doing the festival circuit, and it's early doors, but we are hoping to get into as many film festivals as possible and get into as many screenings as possible, just because we want audiences to see and understand from a different perspective what anaphylaxis looks like.
OK.
Yeah.
But it will be available eventually?
It will be available, yes. It'll be available around summer next year. And we're partnering up with the Natasha Allergy Research Foundation, who are doing amazing work at the kind of forefront of changing lives for allergy sufferers. And
what's your advice?
My advice for allergy sufferers is to really take agency and not worry about asking people, does this have nuts, to check, second, third checks, you know, and also to go towards the Natasha Allergy Research Foundation and learn what you can do, and, you know, how we can make this a collective responsibility as opposed to it always being on the allergy sufferer.
Was the French boy hot?
He was. He was, yes.
Yes. It's good to talk to you, Phoebe. Thanks very much indeed. Look forward to seeing it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Just bear with me 1 second. Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you here on Sky News.
I'll be home for Christmas.
And will you be making it home this Christmas? We talked to an AA patroller about when might be the best time to make your journey.
Who's been generous this year? Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's very light. To Wilf, come on, Chelsea. I'm upset about this already.
To Anna for our next Downing Street washout. To save your voice.
To Gareth, take that, mate.
To Mark, as you're known for loving Chelsea.
What is it? Love opening presents.
What is in the Secret Santa?
What could it be? I hope it's not insects. Is it to wear? The big bug catcher. So I knew something was going on, but I had no idea how huge it was. It's...
Frosty the Snowman. Well, I'm delighted it's not Chelsea related.
It's a Chelsea Football Club gnome, the very best sort of gnome.
I've got a loud mouth, I don't know why. You ready for the election? Oh, look. Camping face. Love it. Oh.
In your Gen Z way, say it was blue, mid, dank or shallow.
Half the time, I have no idea what people are talking about.
Okay. There, you trap the bug inside. Like that?
This is what I've always wanted.
This is very, very cool. Perfect for mulled wine, just the right size. Honestly, who thought of this? I really like it.
It kind of looks a little bit like me as well. It's very, very kind of you.
Beth Rigby, Sky News. Me and Count Binface there, panel and Count Binface. There you go. Happy Christmas and Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
A very Merry Christmas.
From me, Gareth Barlow, and from him, Gary Barlow, a very Merry Christmas. Dad?
Cheers.
A Chelsea gnome it is. Happy Christmas. I would quite like it.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Hello again, everybody. The great Christmas drive home is about to get underway, and with it, the misery of long tailbacks, the frustration, and of course, the breakdowns. So let's get some tips on how to make driving home for Christmas as pain-free and safe as possible. Joined by AA patroller Vince Crane, who's in Bristol for us this morning. Hi, Vince. Thanks for joining us. When are going to be the worst days?
Hi, good morning, Kay. Definitely Friday. Friday's looking like it. It's Christmas being in the midweek is a good thing for travel. It sort of should stagnate it and move it through. But Friday's definitely going to be the day everybody wants to pack up from work, get home, see their families, and then head off and then see, the rest of the families and their loved ones that they've been making plans for throughout the year to go and see.
And when's the best day to travel?
I'd probably say, speak to your family and friends and where you're going to go and see them and things like that. Try and spread it out. Luckily, we've got this gap from Friday all the way through till the middle of next week. Try and plan your journey around that, where you want to go. We're going to have Friday with a lot of people still commuting, going to work, school children still there. Saturday and Sunday are going to be obviously lots of Christmas shopping as well as the normal family activities. So it's really trying to just sort of, have a chat with your loved ones and see when is the best time for you to travel and, be prepared to whenever you travel, you are unfortunately going to experience some delays.
How about 9:30 on Christmas Eve morning, just asking for a friend?
Absolutely perfect time to travel.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear it. What do people need to put in the car? I mean, they're putting the dogs in the car, they're putting all the stuff in the car, the presents that they've wrapped, the presents that they haven't yet wrapped. It's all going in the back of the car. But what do they need to make sure that they've also got in case they break down?
Just a little bit of preparation, especially if you're normally used to just doing the local short trips. Spend 10 minutes just checking the car over before you head off, especially your lights, tyres, screen wash. We've had some horrific weather over the last sort of few weeks and months, and there's a lot of sort of the network that's still trying to recover from that as well. So, there could be delays with this, and it's especially if you're traveling with children, make sure they're occupied, phones are charged up, your breakdown provider, you've got the phone number or the app for them downloaded on the phone. So if the worst should happen, they can come out and assist you. And it's making preparations with the family that you're heading to. They know the local areas, so they'll know if there's any sort of major hotspots or potential delays at the moment that you might be able to avoid.
Yeah, and what about those pesky engine alerts that come on? You guys can't really do anything about those, can you? So what happens then?
Absolutely, we can come out, we can check them. We've got a really good technical help desk as well that, can talk you through it and obviously advise if it's something that's safe to drive or maybe you should stop straight away. But, it's much better to check these things over before you set off on the journey as much as you can to try and avoid, unfortunately breakdowns happen, but as much as you can do to prevent them in the first place is better for obviously yourself, other road network users and, and your friends and family that may be travelling with you at the time.
Are you working over Christmas?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm lucky I've got Christmas Day off, but I'm working the rest of it. So.
Oh, OK. So you're off Christmas Day, but you're working the rest?
Day.
OK.
Yes.
OK. Well, hopefully I won't break down, but if I do, I hope it's you who comes and helps us, Vince. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Kate. Take care.
Merry Christmas. Thank you. Let's have a look what the weather's doing over the next few days. Should we? Here we go. It'll be mild if unsettled for the next couple of days, but it'll turn colder on Thursday, mainly dry and fairly mild now. But rain is spreading across Ireland, Northern Ireland and Northern Scotland. Mostly wet there this morning, with the rain turning more patchy over Ireland, while Southern Scotland and Northern England will see outbreaks of rain becoming widespread. How worried are you about breaking down? Oh, no, you're going to... I hope the plane doesn't break down, otherwise it's...
I am very worried about breaking down. Actually, the last time I did break down, picked up by a breakdown truck, not going to say the brand, breakdown truck, then broke down. Yeah. And so we were now... It was an absolute palaver, palaver. But no, taking the train to Yorkshire and then flight to Canada.
Nice. What about you, Mrs?
I am actually doing a bit of a road trip this Christmas. I am. I'm going to the Midlands first to visit some family there.
Is your mic on?
I hope so. Do I have to shout loud?
Can you just switch it on?
Yeah, of course. How embarrassing.
No, it's not embarrassing, because they couldn't hear a word you were saying, so it's not embarrassing.
Is it on now? Can you hear me?
Can they hear you? Yeah, I can hear you, but you're sat next to me.
Semaphore work.
I said I'll shout and then your mic will pick me up. I do actually speak quite loud. So what I was saying is that I am actually doing a bit of a road trip. I'm going to the Midlands first to visit some family there and then down to Folkestone. So I will be covering... most of the country this Christmas.
Amazing. You know when you didn't put your mic on, you didn't put your earpiece in either.
There's a bit of a scramble to get me on set, Kay.
You've not got your earpiece on?
It's here. Here we go. I've got my clothes on.
You can hear the director now saying,
I am dressed this morning.
Sarah was talking to you. Nothing. Let's listen to Ed Davey.
Oh, my gosh.
There we go. Lib Dem leader has been belting out his Christmas charity single Love Is Enough outside number 10, alongside members of Bath Philharmonia's choir.
Errant R.
The song is in contention to be Christmas number 1. No, it isn't. Having surged up the iTunes chart this month. Do you think it will?
I think they'll get whammed out of the way.
Hey,
yeah, there you are.
You see what he did there? Apparently, they took 40 years to get to number 1, and now it's likely to be 2 years on the bounce.
Which I think is fair enough. They spent a lot of time at number 2, too long at number 2.
Yeah. And did you also know that my producer's talking in my ear, putting me off.
Ed Davey?
No, Wham. Yeah, they gave all the royalties from the record to Band Aid.
Yes, they did. Yeah. Which was super cool, because they were pipped to the post, weren't they, by Band Aid? We had the director on who said that day and a half shoot, day and a half shoot, biggest challenge wasn't the snow for that film, it was keeping them sober.
That's the biggest challenge with us as well on breakfast, isn't it?
Allegedly. Allegedly.
There is some champagne later on, just saying.
Why is that?
It's Christmas.
It's Christmas, that's exactly right. My producer wants you to have a look at this. Have a look. There you go. It's quite funny, to be fair. Have you seen it? I'm, in the Nativity play, I'm a Chinese spy with links to the Three Kings. Very funny.
It is very funny. I think I was like donkey number 3 or something. Yeah.
No speaking part then?
No speaking part, I'm afraid. I really blossomed later in life.
There you go.
I was sort of at the back where I couldn't be seen.
Do you know what? I can't remember. I remember our nativity play being the Technicolor Dreamcoats, and I think I had a bit part, nothing significant, sadly. Even though I had a great voice as a child.
Oh, you still do, don't you?
What were you guys' centre of attention, both of you, I imagine?
Well, unsurprisingly, I was the narrator.
Of course you
was.
Even when he says it, the narrator.
The narrator. The narrator. Maybe because actually my acting skills weren't very good, but I could just read. Maybe it was actually kind of a diss on my skills.
Like that?
But I always... Wow. Shots on fire today. It's a lot for a Tuesday. It's 7:54. But what I love about Christmas nativities is the weird extraneous roles that get kind of created for all the other kids that otherwise don't have a role.
Yeah.
Kate Burley, good morning.
I was the Chinese girl.
OK.
What?
No. What was the role of the Chinese girl?
I had a tea towel that was sort of... it was more like a sheet, and then I had a hairband, and that was it. No words were spoken.
So you blossomed later in life as well, Kay. We had a similar experience.
At that age, I was also in an all-boys school, so who was going to play Mary was always up for contention. So you were kind of convinced with house points. That was the way that they kind of tried to kind of bribe the unsuspecting child to kind of dress up as a girl for 3.5 minutes or whatever it took.
OK. When my sister was in the nativity play, she's 2 years younger than me, she was also the Chinese girl.
Just runs in the family.
Twist on this, which I also know, different schools as well. It wasn't as though it was the schools thing.
Exactly that. But my little boy, I was telling you, can I tell you a story?
I love
my
this
little
story.
boy, they did like a nativity play with music, and the teacher always used to love making the stories up herself. And at the end, it was Father Christmas with Mummy Christmas, and where they were going to go on their holidays because they'd worked hard all year. And so there were 20 4-year-olds singing, I want to spend Christmas on the Isthmus of Panama.
Amazing.
According to
Amazing.
Wikipedia, it is of great geopolitical importance and strategic importance.
Oh, they could have put that in.
Yeah, they could have. It's
Yeah.
also actually quite hard to say.
Yes, but it is an isthmus as well.
It is an isthmus, yes.
There we go. I didn't even know what an isthmus. I had to look it up. There we go. That's it from us for this hour. We will be coming back in just a few moments' time, and you're going to be telling us more about what's going across the road and what's happening with this alleged spy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I will. Sorry, you took me by surprise then. I thought we were still on nativity. Yes, I'll be...
China, for a different sort of China.
Yeah, I'll be updating you guys on that.
OK, lovely. Thank you. All today's stories, as I said, coming up in just a few moments' time. I'm still thinking about that. It still tickles me that my son was singing Christmas on the Isthmus of Panama. We'll see you in just a second. Do stay tuned nowhere. Here on Sky News.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
morning, everybody. It's 8 o'clock on today's programme. One of Russia's most senior generals killed in an explosion in Moscow. How will the Kremlin respond, Deborah?
The Russian general named as Igor Kirillov had been sanctioned over the use of chemical weapons in Ukraine.
Also ahead, amid plans to change the law around homeschooling after the case of Sarah Sharif, will be joined live by the Education Secretary.
And move over Wham, forget about Mariah Carey. Could Ed Davey be heading for a Christmas #1?
No. It's Tuesday, the 17th of December. The Russian general in charge of the country's nuclear troops is killed in an explosion. Investigators say that the bomb was hidden in an electric scooter. Also ahead, lonely this Christmas, Prince Andrew is forced out of the royal family's Christmas Day celebrations amid the China spy storm. Police in Wisconsin named the suspect behind yesterday's deadly school shooting as a 15-year-old girl. Sky News investigates the illegal online casinos drawing in children as young as 12. And hitting the high notes, Ed makes a push for Christmas #1 with his new charity single. Good morning. One of Russia's most senior generals has been killed by an explosion in Moscow. Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov was in charge of Russia's nuclear protection forces. Let's get more on that, Deborah. Good morning.
Yeah, an extraordinary development in obviously people were thinking of the war in Ukraine. There's been no claims of responsibility yet, but the Russian investigators are now looking into what happened. The Russian state media say that this bomb in a scooter was detonated remotely.
Hold on 1 second, if you would, please. Just want to hear from Keir Starmer, who is speaking in Tallinn.
To defence spending in the budget that we passed just a few weeks ago, and we will set out a pathway to 2.5% in due course. So it is an important commitment. And today is an opportunity to discuss with our allies not just the question of budgets, but also the question of how we cooperate, coordinate together, make effective use of the capability that we all have. And so I'm very much looking forward to that. Thank you very much.
Something else for you to talk about there, Deborah?
Yeah, we've got the Prime Minister. He's obviously meeting with other. It's called JEF, the Joint Expeditionary Force. It's a group of like-minded countries, all members of NATO now, across like northern Europe. He's in Estonia at the moment. That's where this JEF conference is taking place. But these allies are obviously very, very concerned about the crisis in Ukraine, trying to work to deter that. And yeah, so this killing of a top Russian general, we don't know who did it. There's been no claims of responsibility yet. But senior Russian officials have been killed before, and previously it has been linked to the war in Ukraine. And this death comes a day after Russia's security service, actually a couple of days after, on Monday. They actually sanctioned this general, accusing him, or opened a case against him, accusing him of being behind the use of chemical weapons against Ukrainian troops, saying that since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, almost 5,000 Ukrainian troops have been, in fact, impacted by chemical weapons use, which is obviously outlawed under international law on the battlefield. So whether or not there is a link, that will surely be a line of inquiry. But it will also, if Russia does choose or decide or find evidence of a link to Ukraine for this killing, then it may seek to retaliate in a new way. Clearly, the actions of Russia so far have been horrific in terms of escalation and violence towards people in Ukraine.
Yeah, indeed. Well, earlier, I spoke to the former chair of the Defence Select Committee, that's Tobias Ellwood. He told me the killing of the general on Russian soil is an embarrassment for the Kremlin.
The removal of a senior military officer responsible for nuclear weapons, not on the battlefield in Ukraine, but in Moscow, just miles from the Kremlin. So this will be an embarrassment for Putin. He cannot hide this from the Russian people, who generally are not supportive of this war. And I'm afraid I would expect a major retaliation on the Russian side.
The distinction.
You think it's embarrassing for Russia?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, regardless of who did this, the fact that you have a bomb being detonated remotely in Moscow, so close to the Kremlin, is a huge security breach. So clearly there will need to be questions to be asked about how that kind of attack could be perpetrated, whether others might be at risk. It seems like quite a sophisticated attack. If they've hidden a bomb on a scooter, detonated it remotely, there will be a huge amount of alarm inside Russia that this kind of killing could take place.
OK, for now. Thanks, Deborah. Thank you. Government facing renewed pressure to designate China a threat to national security after an alleged Chinese spy with close links to Prince Andrew was named as Yang Tengbo. The businessman was born in China in 1974. In 2002, he came to the UK to study. He was a student at the University of York. In 2013, he was granted indefinite leave to remain in the UK. One of his roles was as founder partner of Pitch at Palace, China. And by 2020, he was attending Prince Andrew's 60th birthday party. However, in November of 2021, he was stopped at a port under counter-terrorism laws and asked to hand over digital devices. Because of that, in March of 2023, the Home Secretary at the time, Suella Braverman, directed that he should be excluded from the UK on national security grounds. Laura Bondock is standing by for us. Intriguing about how close this guy could have got to the royals.
Yeah, and I think, it's raised all sorts of questions and once more had lots of people questioning Prince Andrew's judgment, really, and the kind of people he surrounded himself by. Look, I think as far as the royal family is concerned with this story, it was becoming an embarrassment, a distraction. And I think news now that Prince Andrew won't be going to Sandringham for Christmas was perhaps surprising, but it is significant as well. This Christmas gathering at Sandringham is a really big public moment for the royal family. It's a traditional get-together, isn't it? We see them walking to and walking from church. And it's a really real occasion of the year, I think, where we see all the senior royals together in this time. Last year, we did see Prince Andrew there with his ex-wife Fergie. It was symbolic, that, it's telling us really, look, he's not a working royal, but he's still very much part of the royal family. But this year, he won't be there. I mean, palace sources were sort of saying, look, there had been this hope that he would do the honourable thing and not attend, that by attending it would be a distraction. And I think for the royal family, it's been such a difficult year for the King and the Princess of Wales with their cancer diagnosis. They didn't want any sort of the attention focusing on the negative headlines that Andrew is once again finding himself caught up in. So he will be spending Christmas at Royal Lodge in Windsor with Sarah, the Duchess of York. There is this sort of sideline to that in that both his daughters, Princess Beatrice, Princess Eugenie, weren't going to be at Sandringham. They're spending it with their in-laws, but they've done what the palace were hoping was the honourable thing and taken that advice by not attending. There is a question mark, though, Kay, over this Thursday. The King always hosts a bigger family lunch for all those they can't squeeze into Sandringham. That's taking place at Buckingham Palace on Thursday, and we don't yet know if Andrew will be at that private family lunch. But for now, certainly, he will not be there, we know, at Sandringham on Christmas Day.
OK, for now, thank you. Shimon is here to tell us a bit more about this alleged spy and the political side of things.
Definitely, and you're right to say alleged because Yang Tengbo denies this. He says that it's all entirely untrue, saying that he hadn't done anything wrong or unlawful, and actually blamed the change in the political climate for why he believes is being targeted. But Kay, the reason why we know of this story is because a special court upheld the former Home Secretary decision, Suella Braverman, to ban him from the country, saying that she was well within her rights to consider him a threat to national security. But now it's moved on and it's become a conversation about what could be done to prevent something like this happening in future. Yeah. You have ministers now calling for there to be a list where people would have to declare if they're working for foreign governments, and they want there to be greater scrutiny on any people that could potentially be working for the Chinese state. Now, if they didn't declare this, then they could then face criminal prosecution. However, there's now a debate whether or not this is going to actually happen. We have heard from the Security Minister that it will be implemented in summer of 2025, so next year. But whether or not China makes it onto this list is the question.
It certainly is, and we'll put it to the Minister very shortly. Thank you. Looking at some of the other headlines this morning.
Yes, good
Always
morning.
Get yourself a posh coffee, you never get me one.
You've got a posh tea down there.
That's a good point.
If you need one, though, do find me.
Yeah.
And let's bring some of the day's other stories now. A senator from the French islands of Mayotte has told Sky News that residents are starving with no food, water or power in the wake of Cyclone Chido. Rescue efforts are continuing with extra teams and supplies rushed in. Officials concede it will take days to know the total number of people killed in what was the strongest cyclone to hit the region in nearly a century. Thames Water is hoping to win approval at the High Court later this morning for a £3 billion emergency loan to help stop it running out of cash in the spring. Protests are expected outside the court. The company is under pressure to address growing costs and complaints over sewage outflows. Well, let's remain with that topic, shall we? Because a watchdog has ruled that the government and regulators broke the law by allowing water firms to discharge sewage into rivers and also into seas outside of exceptional circumstances. If steps aren't taken to rectify the situation, the government and regulators could face court action. Chris Kamara will return to TV on Boxing Day 2 years after stepping away from broadcasting due to a rare neurological disorder. The Sky Sports pundit will report on the Premier League match between Nottingham Forest and Tottenham. Posting on X, he said he's back after having the best phone call ever.
Good for him. Great guy. Bridget Phillipson is with us this morning, Education Secretary. You've got some new plans you want to tell us about.
Yes, today we're setting out landmark legislation in a new children's bill to make sure that we're keeping all children safe. The state has failed far too many children for far too long, and the measures today will make sure that schools, police and children's social care work together much more effectively to protect children and to keep them safe. And as a part of that, we'll be introducing a register of children not in school so that we know where children are, and that where there are serious concerns, where there's child protection investigations that are underway or child protection proceedings, parents will have to seek the permission of a local council before they can home educate their children. You know, no more lessons learned, no more words. We need to get on and act to make sure that we keep children safe in our country.
And I'm guessing what happened to poor little Sarah Sharif. Presumably, if this does work as you would hope, then that sort of thing just won't happen in future.
I mean, the case of Sarah Sharif is unspeakable in terms of the brutality that such a beautiful, bright young girl experienced in her short life, and also at the hands of those who are meant to love her and keep her safe. And it's right they feel the full force of the law. There will always, sadly, be violent, abusive, manipulative people who will do harm to children. And sadly, there are limits to what can be done to absolutely always stop that happening. But there is much more that we can do. And the legislation today, I think, is a seminal moment in children's safeguarding. And we'll do a lot to make sure that we are, all of us, working together to keep children safe.
Talk to me about this spying scandal. Has it set back our relations with China?
We've been clear as a new government that we will cooperate with China where it is in Britain's strategic national interest. We will compete, and that will apply to areas of business and trading relationships too. And we will always challenge, because our number one priority as a government is Britain's national interest, our security at home and public safety too. And the approach that Keir Starmer has taken and his engagement with the President and David Lammy as Foreign Secretary is entirely consistent with a pragmatic but long-term strategic approach to China.
OK, I get that, but how can we trust them when we regularly find alleged spies close to the highest levels of government and the royals?
I mean, where it comes to individual cases, you'll understand I wouldn't want to engage in commenting on the specifics. But the wider question, of course, is it's right that we absolutely seek to protect Britain's national interest, both at home and abroad. And that does involve taking action where required against individuals who might present a threat to national security.
You're aware of this foreign influence register that Tom Tugendhat says is ready to go. It's box fresh. He sorted it out. You just need to put it into law. Are you going to do that?
We do intend to bring forward measures, as the Minister set out yesterday in the House of Commons, Dan Jarvis. I would just point out, however, that The last government did have the opportunity to do so and didn't. So whilst I recognise the challenge that is presented by Tom Tugendhat, we are looking very closely at it. And as the Minister Dan Jarvis said yesterday, we will be setting out further steps soon.
It would put China top of the list, yet your leader and your chancellor seem to want to keep them close.
We've got our national interests to think about, and that does involve having dialogue with China where it serves Britain's national interests. There will be areas that do require some element of cooperation, but we do so on a pragmatic basis with a clear understanding about the wider strategic challenge that is presented.
OK. Do you acknowledge that China is this country's most prominent security threat?
I'm not going to rank or grade countries in order. I do recognise that there is a need to both cooperate and challenge the Chinese government. But where it's in our national interest on matters of international stability, on other areas too, we will have a dialogue with China. That is right, I think is what the British people would expect. But our number one priority will be to make sure that at home and abroad, we act to secure Britain's national interest. OK, and should that dialogue continue to include people like Prince Andrew, who's embarrassed the country? It's a long-standing tradition that politicians don't engage in commentary on the royal family and that the royal family don't offer commentary on politics. Tempting as it is, I'm not going to break that this morning in your programme.
OK. The alleged spy supposedly helped a British private school with their expansion plans in China. Would it be appropriate for the government to release that school's name? Again, I'm very reluctant to comment on specifics of individual cases, but your viewers can be assured that the Home Secretary will look carefully at all aspects of this case. Why don't you just say what the school is? I'm not in a position to do so, I'm afraid. Do you know who it is? I'm not in a position to answer that question. I know who it is, and I can't say unless you do. Well, we are where we are. Okay. That's how it is. OK. A Politico poll says you've tied with the Conservatives on 26%. Ipsos says 61% of Brits are dissatisfied with the Prime Minister. We've had to make some tough choices as a new government to stabilise the economy and to get Britain back on track. We don't resile from those. We know it's been a challenge. But what I'm talking to you about today is the difference that we will make to transform children's life chances. So, yes, there are tough choices. And with that, you do run the risk of unpopularity. You told us some porkies as well, not you. But, we were told by the Chancellor that there wouldn't be any increased taxes on working people. We also, unfortunately, didn't know that there was a £22 billion black hole in the public finances left behind by the Conservatives. And in the budget, the Chancellor... You added to that. We can do this, can't we? We can do this. But the fundamental principle is we have sought to stabilise the economy, to get Britain back on track and to invest in our public services, our health services and schools through that budget process. And that has required us to take decisions, for example, around national insurance contributions where it comes to employers. But the wider impact that we are seeking to make every day, so take education, for example, how you break that link between a child's background and their future success, how we make sure that children arrive at school ready to learn, expanding childcare opportunities, putting in place more support early on for families. There is a lot that we are getting on and doing. The next general election is a good while off. We will hope? Well, I'm sure it is. And within that time, we will seek to get on and deliver what the British people voted for, which was change, and we will stand on our record at the next election. Polls come and go. They go up and down. That's just the nature of these things. OK. Final thought. Report suggests that the EU wants to have access to our fishing waters and bring in a youth mobility scheme. Something that is a good idea or a bad idea? Again, where it comes to the specifics of ongoing discussion that might take place, I'm not going to offer a running commentary on individual measures. We are clear that we want a better relationship with the EU where it serves British interests and where it allows for our businesses to overcome some of the hurdles, the barriers that were put in place through the Brexit deal negotiated by the last government. I'm just hearing that Humza Yousaf, the former SNP leader, is going to step down as an MSP. Thought on that? Obviously, I'm just hearing
I've only just heard it in my ear for the first time. I wish him and his family the very best for the future if that's the decision he's made to step away from politics. OK, and I wish you the very best for your birthday on Thursday. And a happy birthday to you. Oh, thank you very much. It's good to see you, thank you. We'll get more on that coming up in just a few moments' time, not least the latest on what's happening with Prince Andrew. He has been asked to step back from Christmas with the royal family. He will be staying at Windsor Lodge, is what we are hearing, while the rest of the royals will be at Sandringham. And the main reason for that is they don't want him being
photographed going to church with the rest of the royals, causing quite a lot of embarrassment after those links with the alleged spy. And as far as that is concerned, as far as politics is concerned, didn't really get much from the minister.
No, I mean, she's here to talk about I think it's the Children and Wellbeing Bill and the measures that they put into place, and specifically in the wake of the awful case of Sarah Sharif. But as you might expect, I mean, the story that we've been talking about for the last couple of days is this alleged Chinese spy and his links to Prince Andrew and other political figures as well. You didn't get much out of Bridget Phillipson, and I think...
Tried my best.
You always try your best, Kate. Usually you do. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the government's position is really interesting on this. It's a brand new government. It's always a difficult relationship with China. We've seen them open the door just a little bit more. The Prime Minister meeting the President Xi at the G20, the Chancellor going to China next year for an economic summit. It's a slight thawing of relations, and then suddenly this issue has come up, and I think this has thrown all of that into a very questionable light, and I think conversations will be going on behind closed doors in the Foreign Office and in government in number 10.
OK, for now, thanks so much indeed. Thank you. Can we look at that resignation letter from Humza Yousaf, the former SNP leader? Take my glasses off, I can see it a bit better. Here we go. Oh, can't read that, no. But you can read it on the screen for you, and we'll obviously put it online for you as well. School shootings in the US are sadly a nearly daily occurrence, but a school shooting carried out by a girl is much more rare. Detectives in Wisconsin have identified the person who opened fire at a school yesterday, killing a teacher and a teenage student, as 15-year-old Natalie Rupno. Our US correspondent Mark Stone has more.
The school is called Abundant Life, and yet just days before Christmas, it is the latest scene of America's darkest challenge. The young girl believed to have been responsible for the nation's latest school shooting is 15 years old and a student at the school, where she would shoot teachers and fellow students.
The shooter has now been identified as 15-year-old Natalie Rupno, who went by the name Samantha. She was a student at the school, and evidence suggests she died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
It was just before 11 a.m. when the first calls came in.
A shooter is advising someone was shot.
Initially, confusion.
I'm hearing multiple things, possibly one deceased, maybe 6 people injured, at least 2 shot.
But quickly, some clarity.
Copy. Let's make this an active shooter incident.
And confirmation that it was over.
Shooter is down.
Then the grim routine that feels in this country to be so tragically familiar. The eyewitnesses with reflections that could be from any of America's mass shootings.
We saw a few guys with long guns. They went in the school with a dog. And then a little later on, I saw groups of kids coming out of the school.
And the parents forced again to wonder if their children were among the dead or injured.
My sister called me on the phone. She's like, there is an active shooter at the school. She had like an inside source kind of tell her. And I just bolted out, drove down here. I called my husband, and he made his way over here.
Beyond the familiarity with all this, though, each mass shooting has its uniquely tragic twists. Here, it is the news that the first 911 call came in from a child, calling to report shooting and killing in their own school.
At 10:57 a.m., a second grade student called 911 to report a shooting had occurred at school. Don't let that soak in for a minute. A second grade student called 911 at 10:57 a.m. to report a shooting at school.
A teacher and a student are dead, along with the young woman who killed them. And of those wounded, 2 are critical. Now, as investigators searched a property overnight, the questions come. What was the motive? How was the 9mm pistol acquired? Police do have leads, and they are talking to her parents. There have been nearly 500 mass shootings in America this year. 1,347 children under 18 have died in 2024 from gunshot wounds. Now, another American community is reeling. Mark Stone, Sky News.
Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you here on Sky News. Calls for the Prime Minister to get much tougher on China. We'll speak to the Conservatives.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away.
So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels. I've witnessed migration across Europe close up.
I'm James Matthews and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Washington, D.C. Mr. Musk, has your ignorance and ego cost Ukrainian lives? Free, wherever you get your news.
I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Why do you support Vladimir Putin, Mr. Seagal?
I'm Connor Gillis, Sky's Scotland correspondent. Sky News, the full story first.
Migrants risk their lives climbing aboard these trains in search of a dream, the United States.
It's really dangerous. They often get robbed on this train.
They suffer a lot, by police, cartels.
What happens to them next, we just don't know. Do you miss your mum?
With Trump coming to the presidency, how much longer will people be accommodated?
The journey you've been through, it's been very difficult at times. Has it been worth it?
See. This is a journey which goes by one name, the Beast.
We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. Greg Milam, Sky News, Manchester.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers.
We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
Day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle.
Why only in America? People want their country to work.
You want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
Some breaking news just reaching us here at Sky Centre. Let me tell you, it's according to the Reuters news agency, and they say a security service of Ukraine has killed a Russian general, Kirillov, in the special operation in Moscow. That according to Reuters via the Ukrainian security sources. Deborah, hardly surprising, I suppose.
Hardly surprising. You're not going to get, very unlikely, you're going to get official confirmation from the Ukrainian side. But actually, interestingly, a senior Russian politician, Alexei Zuralev, he has said that I think hardly anyone doubts that the murder of General Kirillov was planned and carried out by the Ukrainian special services. They are proud of it. And what is most terrible is that they encourage terrorism in the West. I mean, that's obviously the Russian view on this alleged attack. But yes, clearly for Ukraine, in terms of its ability to fight back against Russia and Russia's invasion, given that Russia has overwhelming military force, then asymmetric attacks is a way to try to undermine your enemy.
Yes.
And so going after this general who is accused by the Ukrainians of being behind chemical weapons attacks inside Ukraine against Ukrainian forces, which is illegal.
Yeah.
Then it's hardly surprising that he might be deemed a valuable target.
OK, for now, thanks very much indeed. Thank you. Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you, the Shadow Levelling Up Minister will be here live. First, though, the top stories.
Yes, let's bring you those. One of Russia's most senior generals has been killed by an explosion in Moscow. Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov was in charge of Russia's nuclear protection forces. The government is facing renewed pressure to designate China a threat to national security. That's after the naming of an alleged Chinese spy with close links to the Duke of York. Scotland's former First Minister Humza Yousaf has announced he is standing down as an MSP at the next election. He said that after 15 years in the Scottish Parliament, the time will be right for him to move on. Detectives in Wisconsin say the suspected attacker behind yesterday's school shooting was a 15-year-old girl, believed to be called Natalie Rupnow. 2 people, including a teacher and also a fellow student, were killed in the incident.
Joining us now, David Simmons, Shadow Minister for Levelling Up and Housing and Communities. I don't think I've had the pleasure before. It's good to see you. Congratulations on the post. Let's start with China, should we? What on earth is going on? And should we be being as cosy with China as we are?
The UK's relationship with China is a close one in terms of trade, but it's had its ups and downs over the last few years. You probably remember David Cameron talking about a new golden era.
I do.
Since when Chinese government has cracked down, for example, on freedoms in Hong Kong, and the UK has responded. Now, when we were in government, we had something called the FIRST scheme, the Foreign Interest Registration Scheme, which was to require people who were working as agents of other governments to register that fact. So there was a high degree of transparency for universities, for diplomats, for business about what they were here to do. Now, clearly, the new government took office and delayed the implementation of that scheme. But given the events and what's been reported in the news in the last few days, it's clear they need to come forward with some clear proposals so that we can ensure that our industrial base, that our government, our politics are kept free from undue influence.
Why didn't you implement it?
Well, the Foreign Interest Registration Scheme was specifically about that. It was ready to go when we left office. Tom Tugendhat, who was the Security Minister, talked about that in the Commons yesterday. Now, clearly, the government took the view that they didn't wish to implement that, I think because they want to see a closer relationship with China and they're concerned about its diplomatic impact. But our argument is because that wouldn't require introduction of additional tensions between the UK government and China. It simply would introduce transparency about what people were here to do.
I get it.
It's a good way forward to address those concerns.
But why didn't you implement it when you were in power?
Well, we brought it forward. It was ready to go when we left office.
40 years.
And over that period, the UK's relationship with China changed in many different ways. And the reason we brought forward that scheme was because we recognised as we were able to get more information about how China and other countries like Russia were operating, what were effective measures to ensure that degree of transparency was there.
You could have done it if you'd wanted to, you just didn't. A spokesperson for Prince Andrew has said nothing of a sensitive nature was ever discussed between this alleged spy and the Duke of York. Do you think his team is qualified to make that assumption?
Well, that's something that will be for the security services to take a view about.
You don't have a view of your own?
Well, clearly, I don't know exactly what the Duke of York may have known in terms of...
I mean, how can they possibly say that it wasn't, nothing of a sensitive nature was ever discussed? How do they know?
With members of the royal family, with diplomats, with other people operating at high levels, there may well be records of the interactions that they have, and they may be taking that view on the basis of that. But we need to know that. We need to make sure that, especially where something has come to light about an individual or a group of individuals, that we know what secrets, what information that might be commercially confidential, for example, and damaging to British business interests might have been acquired by that route. And we need to make sure that we can put a stop to that.
Yeah, it'd probably be better if he doesn't get involved with foreign nationals in future, though.
Well, it's clearly...
There was a question mark at the end of that.
It's clearly a question. I mean, I think anybody who's engaged in diplomacy, in representing the UK, is always going to come across situations where there's a risk of conflict of interest. That's why we need that degree of transparency. So if you know that somebody may be seeking to gain undue influence on behalf of another government, whichever government that may be, if you know that that's the case, then you can make a judgment about what you share, what degree of influence you give them accordingly. And that's why that element of transparency is so vital.
Your opposite number, Angela Rayner, has promised a mayor for every region of England. What do you make of that?
The concern that we have is the government's come forward with a top-down approach. And when we were in government, we were very much of the view that local areas should be able to choose the arrangements that best suited them. So we know that across the north of England, for example, we've got pretty much comprehensive coverage of mayors, and in other major cities we have that. But some rural areas felt that different arrangements to reflect their local requirements were appropriate. We want to recognise that the UK, with its very diverse geography, its changing population density, its changing local need, is able to identify the solutions that work locally, rather than having somebody in Whitehall say, this one size has to fit all.
So you think it's a good idea in principle?
The principle is one which we supported in government. It's something which we took forward. We've seen mayors like Ben Houchen, like Andy Street, who was until recently the mayor in the Midlands, driving forward an agenda supported by a Conservative government, not in their cases charging any mayoral taxes either. But if we look at the example here in London, where I'm a member of Parliament, there's been a huge increase. It costs every household a bandy council tax, £471 a year to have a mayor. And I think we'd ask whether those arrangements are delivering the kind of value for money and quality services that people in the capital want to see. So we need to make sure that there's that element of local flexibility, rather than somebody in a Whitehall department saying everybody should. Well, they do, that's a matter of fact, but we want to make sure.
Is that the case in Greater Manchester?
We want to make sure that the arrangements that we have in place reflect local need.
Is that the same in Greater Manchester? Does the mayor cost more there?
The mayors all over the country have different arrangements the way they do it, but I think it's very clear that two Conservative mayors, like Ben Houchen and Andy Street, they've driven forward the economic regeneration of the area, focused on employment, and they've not raised a mayoral precept at all. They've charged nil.
As has Andy Burnham, and I think Andy Burnham gives 15% of his salary to charity as well, so can't criticise all Labour mayors, can you?
Well, I'm sure Andy Burnham is very popular in Greater Manchester, and we've seen him as a figurehead for that city. The question we always have to ask is that form of local leadership? And in Greater Manchester, given it's a metropolitan area with a major focus on economic growth, that arrangement is probably one that works correctly. But if you look at some of the more rural parts of the United Kingdom, we look at what's being said, for example, by local leaders in Cornwall or on the south coast, in Cumbria, then imposing a mayoral arrangement to a footprint that's designed in central government may not be the way of meeting the needs and aspirations of those local people.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Simmons. It's good to talk to you. Thank you. Sky News investigation has found illegal online casinos are using the popular video game Roblox to draw children as young as 12 into gambling. We'll get more from Mickey in just a second, but first, this is her report.
It's a huge digital playground, and if you're not hanging out in it, your kids probably are. Nearly 39 million children play Roblox every day. It's one of the most popular video games in the world. But now, a Sky News investigation has uncovered a network of illegal online casinos like Bloxmoon, with its cartoon graphics and bright colours, preying on underage Roblox users and encouraging them to gamble tens of thousands of pounds on their sites. Behind the green LED lights and oversized facial expressions is a teenage boy. Robert, not his real name, is wearing a mask to conceal his identity. He's 16 now, but he was just 14 when he started gambling on these illegal casinos in the US. He thinks he's gambled around £150,000 in total.
I would do small bits at first, and that would gradually go up and up. I'd get the adrenaline being on call with my friends, just deciding what we're going to do, deciding how we're going to triple it, double it.
RBLX Wild and Bloxmoon are two illegal sites that the Gambling Commission has taken action against after we brought them to their attention.
At the end of the day, these illegal casino operators, they are criminals. They're supported by criminal gangs and they're part of the criminal underworld. And it's really important that all of us play their part in trying to frustrate them.
Roblox is popular. It's got 80 million daily users, and 42% of those are under 13, according to Roblox. It's free to play, but if users want to buy anything in the Roblox world, as you would want to in real life, it'll cost them, or their parents, Robux. That's the currency that's used here. But children are using it to gamble on casino sites like this one, Bloxmoon. Our investigation focused on this website as well as two other casinos, Blox Flip and RBLX Wild. Their users are encouraged to seek out the unlicensed sites through adverts from influencers on social media. In the case of Bloxmoon, for example, users log in with their Roblox credentials. Then they bet their Robux on games like slots or blackjack. They can then withdraw any winnings, either as Robux or as cryptocurrency, which can easily be changed into cash. Roblox told us the websites in question are in no way endorsed or authorised by Roblox. We've taken numerous steps to disrupt their activity, which violates our terms of use. We have a dedicated group focused on identifying potentially fraudulent activity on Roblox, and we work collaboratively with law enforcement authorities where possible to pursue the owners of such websites. Our efforts have been met with some success, but we would welcome further law enforcement action and vigilance from web hosting providers to shut down sites like this. We approached the 3 casinos for comment, but didn't get a reply. As action against them ramps up, is the end coming for these opportunistic gambling rings?
Mickey's with us now. So these sites close down and they immediately pop back up again?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Gambling Commission and authorities all over the world are essentially playing whack-a-mole with a criminal underworld. And that makes it really hard to regulate these kind of things. When we were doing this investigation, we were speaking to people who are involved in gambling charities and that in the UK. We also spoke to Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, who runs a parliamentary group looking at gambling-related harms. And he said that the regulations that we have at the moment aren't fit for purpose because of that kind of whack-a-mole aspect to it. The regulations that we have are built for bricks and mortar casinos, which are really strictly regulated here in the UK. And they don't really work, it seems, for these online gambling worlds that we're entering into now. And that kind of puts the onus of stopping children or preventing children from playing on these casinos onto parents. And so when we spoke to a gambling charity called YGAM, they look after children and young gamblers in the UK, they said that parents can do a couple of things if they're worried about their kids playing on these sites. So you can look at your internet settings, you can look at your web hosting settings and see if there's a way of blocking children getting onto these casinos. And if that doesn't work or you're not sure how to do that, they say the best thing you can do is just talk to your kids, explain that these sites are illegal, they're unlicensed, but also gambling as an under 18 in the UK is illegal as well. So by going onto them, you're acting illegally, but also just letting kids know that if they've gone onto these sites and they've got into trouble, that they can speak to the parents or they can speak to someone at school.
Exactly that. Ramifications are endless, aren't they? Thanks very much indeed, Mickey. Thank you. I want to update you on that breaking news this morning about the killing of one of Russia's most senior generals, and that was in an explosion. The first deputy chairman of Russia's State Duma Defense Committee, that's Alexei Zuralev, has blamed Ukraine for the bomb. He said, "I think hardly anyone doubts that the murder of General Kirillov was planned and carried out by the Ukrainian special services. They are proud of it, and what is most terrible is that they encourage terrorism in the West." He is the first Russian official to publicly blame Ukraine. Will standing by for us this morning. Good morning to you, Will. What's caught your eye?
Good morning to you, Kay. Well, that's clearly one of the top stories. We'll be continuing your coverage on it. And Professor Michael Clark is on his way in, and so we'll get his take early on in the shows, I think. You will as well, and looking for other takes as well to come. Quite a lot of other live events coming today, Kay. Post Office inquiry continues its closing remarks, closing statements today, and we'll be dipping into that throughout the day as and when the key people come to the microphone. Also expecting some other business news. The Thames Water bailout goes before the High Court. We'll see if that all goes through or not. Very important ruling for all involved there. And in Parliament, quite a busy day as well with various committee hearings. Both Michael Gove, Charles Clarke and, importantly, the Home Secretary go in front of the Prisons Committee. The Justice Secretary also going in front of the committee as well later on in the day. So we'll be dipping in and out of all of that in light of course, those huge releases of prisoners over the course of the summer. And Keir Starmer continues his trip through parts of Eastern Europe. He's still in Estonia today. Lots of bilaterals with the Joint Expeditionary Force leadership countries today, and he's expected to talk in the afternoon, so we'll have that when it comes across. And most importantly, Kay, what has caught my eye? It is your birthday. Wishing you the happiest of birthdays on this, your 44th birthday.
You've read it in the Times, so you know it's not 44, don't you?
No, the Times can be wrong.
I came in this morning and the producer was singing a very famous Beatles song. Can you guess which one it was?
I can, but also the producer might have got the information wrong. But you know, it's a good Beatles song. Just the number's wrong. You can change the number.
Exactly. Well, the champagne later on. So if you want to postpone the programme for an hour, pop down.
I mean, if I'm allowed to.
Of course.
Yeah, we'll sort it out. Someone else
Tell the
needed.
boss I said so.
Perfect. I will. Happy birthday, Kay.
Thank you very much indeed, Will. Thank you. Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you here on Sky News. With Instagram facing accusations of turning a blind eye to child sex abuse, we'll hear from the founder of a child protection charity next.
Who's been generous this year? Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's very light. To Wilf, come on, Chelsea. I'm upset about this already.
To Anna for our next Downing Street washout. To save your voice.
To Gareth, take that, mate.
To Mark, as your gnome for loving Chelsea.
What is it? Love opening presents.
What is in the Secret Santa?
What could it be? I hope it's not insects. Is it to wear? The big bug catcher. So I knew something was going on, but I had no idea how huge it was. It's
Frosty the Snowman. Well, I'm delighted it's not Chelsea related.
It's a Chelsea Football Club gnome, the very best sort of gnome.
I've got a loud mouth, I don't know why. You ready for the election? Oh, look. Camping face. Love it. Oh.
In your Gen Z way, say it was blue, mid, dank or shallow.
Half the time, have no idea what people are talking about.
Okay. There, you trap the bug inside. Like that?
This is what I've always wanted.
This is very, very cool. Perfect for mulled wine, just the right size. Honestly, who thought of this? I really like it.
It kind of looks a little bit like me as well. It's very, very kind of you.
Beth Rigby, Sky News. Me and Count Binface there, panel and Count Binface. There you go. Happy Christmas and Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
A very Merry Christmas.
From me, Gareth Barlow, and from him, Gary Barlow, a very Merry Christmas. Dad?
Cheers.
A Chelsea gnome it is. Happy Christmas. I would quite like it.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Well, let's bring in Baroness Beban Kidron. She's the founder of a Five Rights Foundation, and she is not at all happy with Meta.
No.
Why not?
So I've been working with a specialist unit of police who approached me, and we were working for about 6 months trying to identify pieces of AI-generated child sexual abuse. What was wrong with the law, because I was going to take some action in Parliament to make better law. And in the process of doing that, we came across a lot of profiles on Instagram with very scantily clad young children that then pointed to, directly linked to child sexual abuse images, both AI-generated and some involving real children. And I asked the police to report it, flag it. They did. I then asked them to check with Meta whether they had taken them up. There had been no action. And then we involved a law firm, Schillings. We asked them to write to Meta. They wrote to 3 publicly available website addresses. And Meta didn't do anything. It was only when there was a big story in the Daily Mail that they actually responded at all. And they said their accounts online, abuse@meta.com, is not monitored. what that means is nobody's looking. They didn't get the flags. And these were flags done by the police. And we've been engaged in a number of interactions with Meta, and they have failed to adequately respond. And so we've escalated this to Ofcom, to the ICO, our two regulators in this space, and saying, this is just not good enough.
What do you want Ofcom to do?
I think that Ofcom, who have new powers coming in, have actually said on the record, we ask companies to act ahead of the law coming in. But actually, I think that Ofcom can do something else, which is they can look at the detail of this case. And I don't want to upset your listeners, but it is horrific what we've seen. Horrific. And I think they can look at the detail of the case, and when they start doing their codes, they can say, they can put in place regulation that says, this is not good enough. Because we looked yesterday, and some of those same images are back up on Instagram. And I have to say, Kay, one image is too much. But actually, the followers of the combined accounts ran into their tens of thousands.
Goodness.
Tens of thousands. And I think that what we're saying is, Meta, we need more proactive. We need you to be looking when people try and report. You have to have the ability report. And we're saying to the regulators, come on, gloves off. It's time to get serious about how...
They have said, to be fair, Melanie Dawes was on the programme yesterday, and she did say that they are going to get serious, and they can fine organisations like Meta, Facebook, Instagram, up to 10% of their profits.
And that is fantastic, and I'm part of the parliamentary group that brought that forward, and we're very excited for that to be the case. But we've had laws, we've had data laws in place, and we have not seen robust enforcement. Yeah, and we are not entirely happy with some of the codes that have come out of Ofcom. We think there's gaps. All the children's charities, including Molly Rose Foundation, is very disappointed about some of the issues around pro-suicide material, and also some of my colleagues, because the Ofcom decided to look at small companies very differently from big companies, and actually small is not safe. We know that from years of campaigning. So there are gaps in the system, and I really do welcome Ofcom being tough. But I think that what I really want people to understand is they've got to put this at the top of their political agenda. They've got to start saying to their MPs, they've got to start really saying that they care about how tech companies treat children. Your last item was about, gambling online. I think we've got to get rid of this idea that it's another space. It's a real space. It's where children grow up, and we have to import the rules and regulations and the cultural expectations that children will be treated as if they're children.
Let me put to you what we heard from Meta. Obviously, we spoke to them, and they issued the following statement. It looks like this. Let's have a quick look at it, should we? Child exploitation of any kind is horrific, and we have clear rules against it. We've developed technology to proactively find and remove child sexual abuse material, including AI-generated CSAM. Is that the initials? Yeah. We report apparent instances of this content to the National Centre for Missing and Exploited Children in line with our legal obligations, and support law enforcement in its efforts to arrest and prosecute the criminals behind it.
Well, it's a beautifully written statement, but I don't think I can agree with it. And I think that, yes, the bit that I'll agree with is child sexual abuse is a horrific outcome of their business. That is, and in any other situation, we would find it unacceptable that that's a known outcome of a commercial entity. But the police came to me, and the reason the police are not sitting here this morning is because they work covertly, privately. They came to me, and they were the ones who flagged. They were the ones who tried to contact Meta, and they are the ones who are saying, it's proliferating, it's not there. Meta could do so much more, and they can start by having the emails where people complain to them about abuse cases to be monitored. It's outrageous.
Well, I know the main man in the UK for Meta watches this programme, so hopefully he's listening, and do let us know how you get on.
Nick.
It's good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Quick look at the weather for you now here on Sky News this Tuesday morning, just a week till Christmas. Can you believe it? It's going to be unsettled for the next couple of days, but it'll turn colder on Thursday, mainly dry, fairly mild now, but rain is spreading across Ireland, Northern Ireland, and also northern Scotland. Mostly wet there this morning, with the rain turning more patchy over Ireland, while southern Scotland and northern England will see outbreaks of rain becoming widespread. Do you want to see Sir Ed Davey with a fancy jumper on?
Always.
Great.
Always.
What we're here for. Could it be the Christmas #1?
I think it probably won't be.
Oh, you're
you know what,
sticking your neck out there,
I
aren't
don't know
you?
if you guys have talked about this already, but you know his birthday is Christmas Day. I
did know that, yeah.
I mean, it would be so lovely for him.
That would be quite and also lovely for the kids as well, because it is for a good cause, isn't it? Kind of talking about children being carers, a situation close to his heart. But
They're not Wham, though, are they?
they're not Wham, and Wham are probably going to pip them to the post as well.
Yeah, but there you go. He's raising a lot of money for the charity, as you said.
Yes, and I know we're hardwired to sort of hate politicians, but I think of all the politicians, Ed Davey is probably the most liked, given his election campaign. He's 58 years old. His birthday's on Christmas Day. He's a carer himself. He's raising money.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, but no. I loved how his midlife crisis coincided with the election campaign, though.
I think a few people's did.
Very true as well. Still to come, we will be telling you more about a surprise pitch invasion by deer. What are we talking about? Stay tuned and find out. See you in a second.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Morning, everybody. It's 9 o'clock on today's programme. One of Russia's most senior generals killed in an explosion in Moscow.
Russia has blamed Ukraine for the death of Igor Kirillov. Vladimir Putin's allies threaten imminent revenge.
We're at the scene of a major protest against one of the country's biggest water companies that could run out of cash in the spring.
And move over Wham. Forget about Mariah Carey. Could Sir Ed Davey be heading for Christmas #1?
No. It's Tuesday, the 17th of December. The Russian general in charge of the country's nuclear troops is killed in an explosion. Investigators say that the bomb was hidden in an electric scooter. The father and stepmother of Sarah Sharif are to be sentenced for her murder as the government pledges new laws to protect homeschooled children.
The legislation today, I think, is a seminal moment in children's safeguarding, and we'll do a lot to make sure that we are, all of us, working together to keep children safe.
Also ahead, lonely this Christmas, Prince Andrew is forced out of the royal family's Christmas Day celebrations amid the China spy storm. And hitting the high note, Sir Ed Davey makes a push for Christmas #1 with his new charity single. Good morning, everybody. We start with the suspected killing of one of Russia's most senior generals who's died in an explosion in Moscow. In the last hour, Russia has blamed Ukraine for the death of Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov, who was in charge of Russia's nuclear protection forces. Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev has threatened imminent revenge on Ukraine's leadership. So far, no official comment from Kiev. Let's get more with Deborah, who's joining us now. I don't think there's much doubt about who is likely responsible.
Well, the Reuters news agency is reporting that this attack was carried out by Ukraine's security services. There's been no official confirmation of that, and you wouldn't expect there to be any kind of confirmation of this kind of attack if it is linked to Ukraine. I mean, the war in Ukraine, Russia's war in Ukraine, it really illustrates that when a country like Ukraine is being attacked by a much larger military, a much stronger country, often the only way to be able to try to level the playing field is to carry out these kind of asymmetric attacks, such as assassinations. And this general, the Ukrainians, only on Monday had charged him with being behind the use of chemical weapons in the war on the ground in Ukraine. But the fact that an attack like this could be carried out on the streets of Moscow is going to be alarming for Russians, for civilians. Embarrassing for the government. And I think maybe there's a picture we've got of this e-scooter that was the one that was linked to the it had an explosive device. You can see it there now. That has been geolocated to the scene. It's from somewhere called Kugukin, which is a brand that was founded in China but has multiple overseas warehouses across Europe and including in the UK. Russia is one of its main exporting countries, apparently, according to the company's website. And I imagine this kind of attack, it does sort of make you think about what happened in Lebanon, where you had Israeli intelligence linked to those exploding devices that were used by Hezbollah, the sort of the walkie-talkies and the radios that, the mobile phones that exploded. It really just sort of show you how, with the advances in technology, the different ways that you can use to launch attacks against an enemy.
Yeah. For now, thanks very much indeed. Thank you. Well, earlier, the former chair of the Defence Select Committee, Tobias Ellwood, told me the killing of a general on Russian soil is an embarrassment for the Kremlin.
The removal of a senior military officer responsible for nuclear weapons, not on the battlefield in Ukraine, but in Moscow, just miles from the Kremlin. So this will be an embarrassment for Putin. He cannot hide this from the Russian people, who generally are not supportive of this war. And I'm afraid I would expect a major retaliation on the Russian side.
We also spoke to that about Sarah Sharif, the case, as you know. The stepmother and father are both going to be sentenced for her murder today. I spoke to the Education Secretary about it earlier.
I mean, the case of Sarah Sharif is unspeakable in terms of the brutality that such a beautiful, bright young girl experienced in her short life, and also at the hands of those who are meant to love her and keep her safe. And it's right they feel the full force of the law. There will always, sadly, be violent, abusive, manipulative people who will do harm to children. And sadly, there are limits to what can be done to absolutely always stop that happening. But there is much more that we can do. And the legislation today, I think, is a seminal moment in children's safeguarding. And we'll do a lot to make sure that we are, all of us, working together to keep children safe.
Some of today's other headlines for you now. Here's Gareth.
Yes, good morning. We'll start with the senator from the French islands of Mayotte, who has told Sky News residents are starving with no food, water or power in the wake of Cyclone Chido. Rescue efforts are continuing with extra teams and supplies being rushed in. Officials concede that it will take days to know the total number of people killed in what was the strongest cyclone to hit the region in nearly a century. Scotland's former First Minister Humza Yousaf has announced that he's standing down as an MSP at the next election. He said that after 15 years in the Scottish Parliament, the time will be right for him to move on. To the United States now, where detectives in Wisconsin say the suspected attacker behind yesterday's school shooting was a 15-year-old girl called Natalie Rubnow. 2 people, including a teacher and also a fellow student, were killed in the attack. Here in the UK, a watchdog has ruled that the government and regulators broke the law. That's by allowing water firms to discharge sewage into rivers and seas outside of exceptional circumstances. If steps aren't taken to rectify the situation, the government and also the regulators could be facing court action.
Now, the government's facing renewed pressure to designate China a threat to national security after an alleged Chinese spy with close links to Prince Andrew was named as Yang Tengbo. So what do we know about Yang Tengbo? He was born in China in 1974. In 2002, he came to the UK to study. He was a student at the University of York. 2013, granted indefinite leave to remain in the country. One of his roles was as founder partner of Picture Palace China. And by 2020, he was attending Prince Andrew's 60th birthday party. However, in November of 2021, he was stopped at the port under counter-terrorism laws and asked to hand over digital devices. Because of that, in March of 2023, the Home Secretary at the time, Suella Braverman, directed that he should be excluded from the UK on national security grounds. Laura standing by for us this morning at Sky Centre. Hello to you, Laura. A very good morning to you. It's not a very good morning for the Prince, is it?
No, it's not. And it got worse yesterday because I think his hopes of attending that big family Christmas at Sandringham, the King's private estate, have now been completely dashed. The announcement that he will not be going to Sandringham for Christmas. And it came as a bit of a surprise because it is quite significant, really. I mean, this is the one time of the year where we see all the royal family, senior members of the family, extended members of the family, gathering together in the same place. It's a very private moment, but of course the cameras are let in to watch them walk to and from the church on the estate. But I think that, you know, the mood music around those headlines, the negative headlines Andrew had been facing about his close connection with this Chinese individual, weren't going away. And I think the palace, speaking to officials, was sort of saying that they were hoping that he would do the honourable thing and not attend because it just became too much of a distraction. And think about the year that the royal family have had with both the King and the Princess of Wales, cancer diagnoses. This was the one sort of positive end to the year with everyone, as I say, under the same roof, in the same place at the same time. So Andrew and his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, will be spending Christmas together, not in Sandringham, but in Windsor at Royal Lodge, the home they share. Their 2 daughters, we understand, were never going to be going to Sandringham. They were going to be spending the day with their in-laws. So for now, that's it really for Andrew. But big questions, though, still this week, because the King hosts a Christmas lunch for even more members of the royal family, those who can't fit into Sandringham on the day itself, and questions on Thursday as to whether or not Andrew will be attending that lunch at Buckingham Palace. We don't know at the moment. Watch this space is all I can say.
Yeah, we'll certainly know when the cars start arriving, though, won't we? Let's wait and see. For now, thanks very much indeed, Laura. Thank you. Shaman is here, so that's what the royals are doing. It's interesting to see that they go to their in-laws at Christmas as well, doesn't it? Almost like normal people. What about across the road?
Well, this has now escalated. It's not just Prince Andrew that's now been tied to Yang Tembo. We've also seen images of him meeting two former Prime Ministers, David Cameron and Theresa May, both on separate occasions over the course of around 15 years. Now, there's no suggestion that they knew about these links, but there now are questions being asked about whether or not he is acting alone as well. Now, Yang Tembo has said that actually these claims are false. He hasn't done anything wrong, and he is a victim of this changed political climate. However, now MPs are calling for the government to implement FIRS, this foreign influence registration scheme. It would mean anyone working for a foreign government would have to declare so. Otherwise, they could face criminal prosecution if they didn't. Now, we've heard from Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, who was referencing this report by the Parliament's Intelligence Security Commission, where it said that around 40,000 members of China's United Front Work Department had penetrated every single sector of the UK. So there are now MPs saying that when this registration is established, which the government says will be next summer, that China needs to be on the top of that list so that there is extra scrutiny.
OK, for now. Thanks very much. Thank you. Now, from luxury villas to repurposed factories, the full extent of the drug exports that bankrolled Bashar al-Assad's regime is now being revealed. Our international correspondent, Diana Magnay, reports.
Now the dictator is gone, and it's these men in charge. We can show you for the first time just how the production of an amphetamine called Captagon fueled Assad's narco state.
So these are all the raw materials, is that right?
Yes. This caffeine هي تصنع.
For years, Syria's neighbours warned about the flood of Captagon pouring out from Syria and across the Middle East, especially into the Gulf.
It's the drugs.
Ah, right. Okay. Quite a lot of drugs.
This is drugs.
And so this all gets crushed together and put into these small
Yes, yes. Press and small tablets. Yes, this. Plastic balls, small balls, and inside 4 tablets.
Wow.
Tablets, drugs.
How much do you think you sell this for?
1 tablet, $5.
$5.
Yes.
Tablet. So $20. It's difficult to open.
Yes.
The scale is extraordinary, especially when you think that this was just a private villa belonging to a man called Basim, a colonel in Syria's 4th Armoured Division.
So this is the part where the family actually lived. The other side is just the factory. And you look at this luxury, it's pretty tacky luxury, and you think about the fact that whilst most of the people of this country were living in absolute poverty, the economy devastated by the civil war, these little capsules were literally what were keeping the Assad family and their cronies in this kind of luxury.
Abu Bilal has just returned to the farm he was forced to evacuate when the villa next door was built.
هذه كانت للرابعة. الفرقة الرابعة.
This entire area belonged to the 4th Division. Not a single soul could come near here. We never knew what they were doing because we couldn't come near here. No one.
لأنه إحنا ممنوع نشوف شو في ما في.
The 4th Division ran much of the Captagon trade too, under the control of Bashar's brother Maher, famously thuggish, believed to have fled Syria for Iraq and possibly now Moscow. This is another Captagon factory in a Damascus suburb. The pills hidden in electric switching systems, hundreds of thousands of them. The factory belongs to Mohammed Al-Tout, but when he fled the civil war in 2014, he says Maher and his cronies moved in.
They turned my food production facility into a drug operation. I went to the relevant authorities to claim my factory back, and no one helped me.
Hardly surprising, given the revenues that Captagon was bringing in. Somewhere between $2 and $6 billion, the World Bank says. And an economy worth not much more than that. Diana Magnay, Sky News, Damascus.
The father and stepmother of Sarah Sharif will be sentenced today for her murder. 10-year-old Sarah was found with dozens of injuries at the family's home in Woking last year. Our correspondent Saba Chowdhury is at the Old Bailey for us this morning. Saba, tell us more.
Good morning, Kay. Well, after a jury deliberated for 9 hours and 46 minutes, they last week found Sarah's father, Irfan Sharif, and her stepmother, Binish Batul, guilty of her murder. They also believe that Sarah's uncle, Faisal Malik, was complicit, finding him guilty of causing or allowing Sarah's death. Now, today, all three will be sentenced for their role in what prosecutors have described as a campaign of abuse targeted at the 10-year-old. Now, throughout this murder trial, all three maintained their innocence, largely pointing the blame at each other. But it was during Sharif's cross-examination on the 7th day that he cracked, taking full responsibility for almost everything, that he said, killed Sarah, that he had beat her with a cricket bat with a palm and had caused her many fractures. But ultimately, the jury decided that he alone did not murder Sarah, and that it was Sarah's primary carer, her stepmother Batul, that also contributed to her murder, believing that she encouraged or assisted some of the beatings which eventually led to her death. Now, the sentencing itself will take place in the next couple of hours, which means that justice for Sarah is now one step closer.
OK, Saba, thank you. Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you here on Sky News. Concerns over a shortage of Guinness this Christmas. We'll be speaking to a pub landlady next.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime. They don't care for that. Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away.
So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels. I've witnessed migration across Europe close up.
I'm James Matthews and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Washington, D.C. Mr. Musk, has your ignorance and ego cost Ukrainian lives? Free, wherever you get your news.
I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Why do you support Vladimir Putin, Mr. Seagal?
I'm Conor Gillis, Sky's Scotland correspondent. Sky News, the full story first.
Migrants risk their lives climbing aboard these trains in search of a dream, the United States.
It's really dangerous. They often get robbed on this train.
They suffer a lot by police, cartels.
What happens to them next, we just don't know. Do you miss your mum?
With Trump coming to the presidency, how much longer will people be accommodated?
The journey you've been through, it's been very difficult at times. Has it been worth it?
See. This is a journey which goes by one name, the Beast.
We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. Greg Milam, Sky News, Manchester.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers.
We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Heavy vehicle.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
They want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
Now, the government's just announced it will offer compensation to sub-postmasters who were victims of capture accounting software. So what's all that about? Somebody who's in the know. Adele is with us. Hi, morning. Tell me more.
Hello, yeah. I mean, effectively, this is the first time that the government has officially recognised this as a scandal, the scandal before the scandal, if you like. It's confirmed that it's going to offer redress to so-called capture victims. Now, just to clarify exactly what that is, capture was software that was used before the infamous Horizon IT system. That was introduced in 1999. Capture was used between 1992 and 1999, and there are striking similarities between the way that the Post Office went about their prosecutions of sub-postmasters who used capture and how they went after the ones who used Horizon. Now, the Kroll report, which is a report the government commissioned a couple of months ago, found that there was a reasonable likelihood that capture had created shortfalls, cash shortfalls for sub-postmasters. Now, this latest update is a response to that. So they're officially recognising it as a scandal, effectively. They're announcing redress. The sticking point is that the redress won't be... the people who won't be eligible for it at the moment, that is, are the ones who were convicted. They are not announcing any kind of blanket exoneration in the same way that they did for Horizon victims. It's a challenge for the government. We remember earlier this year there was a sticking point between the judiciary and the government over setting a precedent. But they haven't ruled it out, interestingly. I did an exclusive interview with the Post Office Minister, Gareth Thomas. I pressed him on it. He didn't answer, but he did say that this is all about a first step. They were going down the Criminal Cases Review Commission route, so putting pressure on them, putting an urgent pressure onto the Post Office to get back to them with more information. This is some of what he had to say to me.
The redress does exclude those who would be excluded, which is why we're working with the Criminal Cases Review Commission. It's why we've instructed the Post Office to go through their records and provide as much information as quickly as possible to the Criminal Cases Review Commission so that they can make a judgment on whether those convictions are unsafe.
Earlier this year, the government exonerated all Horizon victims. Why won't you do that for capture victims?
Well, the first stage is to allow the Criminal Cases Review Commission to do its work in making a judgment about the 5 cases that it has had presented to it. The Kroll report that we were presented back in September did not make a judgment about whether criminal convictions were safe or unsafe. So the Criminal Cases Review Commission is doing that work now. We've instructed the Post Office to work at pace to provide whatever information the Post Office still has to the Criminal Cases Review Commission in the cases that are before it, and we'll then make a judgment from there.
Well, I've also just heard from one of the capture victims, Steve Marston, who was convicted. He was forced to plead guilty to stealing.
You won't get the money at the moment.
No, and he isn't happy. He has said that the software may have been different, but the end results and treatment by the Post Office are identical. He says that to deny capture victims the same exoneration process is, by its very nature, double standards. So, not happy. The CCRC route will take longer. That's the Criminal Cases Review Commission. And the older the case, the longer it will take. But this is just the first step that the government will likely say. Who knows where it could lead.
OK, thanks very much. Thank you. Oh, you know what we were talking about earlier about alcohol-free drinks? I know, weird, right? But apparently, if you like Guinness, there's a shortage of it.
I don't.
Oh, that's all right then. You ruined that, didn't you?
Sorry. Oh, well.
Well, somebody who does care is Kate Davidson, landlady of the old Ivy House, and she's with us now. Hello to you, Kate.
Good morning.
So tell me what the problem is.
Well, we saw in the news a week and a half ago that there was a national shortage of Guinness. When I went to do my orders last Monday, I do weekly orders, I was only able to get half of the Guinness supply that I normally order.
And why is it?
We've been told that there's an uptake of Guinness drinkers across the country. Might be something to do with Kim Kardashian having posted a picture of her drinking Guinness. But I mean, personally, we haven't seen that different crowd. For us, it's a similar sort of crowd as it has been for the last couple of years. But yeah, there seems to be a national shortage.
Can they not increase supply?
We've been told it will only be a week or two, so it should be over by the end of December. We don't talk directly to Diageo, who supply the Guinness. We go through our brewery, Shepherd Neame, so they have passed on the ration to us in a way.
How popular is Guinness in your pub?
It's our top-selling drink, and it has been for a couple of years, second only to premium lager.
Is that right? And does it? So Sarah, our director, wants to know if it impacts alcohol-free Guinness as well.
Yes, that's been unavailable for me to order for the last couple of weeks. In fact, I didn't think it would be that would be the case, but I suppose it's been a bit of a slower burn, the 0% Guinness, and we supplied it in cans rather than on draft. So yeah, there's been an issue with that as well.
And what are your customers saying when you say sorry?
Well, to be honest, it's party season, so a lot of people are out just to have a good time. So it's fortunate for us that it's happened at this time of year, because people will just default to their second favourite drink anyway, rather than turning around and going out. Yeah, so people have a wider drink profile these days. They don't just stick to one drink.
Who's your average Guinness drinker?
It varies a lot. I think 10 years ago it used to be sort of a middle-aged to older gentleman. But I mean, I've drunk Guinness for 10 or 15 years. We've got a lot of students that live over the road. They drink Guinness. It's a mixture of men and women, all ages, really. It's different to how it used to be, for sure.
And does it not have a lot of calories in it?
I have looked this up. It's got fewer calories than a pint of lager, interestingly so.
Is that right? But what would you say to people who are listening this morning and having slight palpitations at the thought of not being able to have a Guinness over Christmas?
Well, they have assured us that it will all be back to normal. We actually were very lucky to get a courier delivery of a couple of barrels yesterday. So we now, because the pinch for us is last week and this week, everybody leaves London on Friday. So to have it back in stock next week is no good to us. So the brewery, Shepherd Neame, have done us a solid and sent us out some barrels. So we do have some in Clerkenwell now.
OK, what's your tipple, Kate?
I like a Guinness. I like a red wine. I mean, I'm a landlady. I like all of the drinks, really.
Are you keeping some back for yourself?
Absolutely not. No, it's a barrel system, so we can't. There's no way of doing that. No, so I've been off it for the week when it's been in ration.
It's good to see you, Kate. Thanks very much indeed. I hope you get that back on tap before too long. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Still to come on the Breakfast Show for you. We are going to be talking about the cost of stamps being blamed for fewer people sending Christmas cards. So, does the festive tradition still have a place in today's society? That's our debate. Next. Logan, everybody, welcome back to The Breakfast Show here on Sky News. Running out of Guinness.
I say. As someone with an Irish passport, that hits me hard.
Does it? Yeah. I bet you've got some supplies somewhere there.
Tucked away.
Yeah.
The reserve.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about Christmas cards and whether you send them or not. And that's coming up in just a second.
Before that, the top stories for you this morning. One of Russia's most senior generals has been killed by an explosion in Moscow. Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov was in charge of Russia's nuclear protection forces. The father and stepmother of Sarah Sharif will be sentenced today for her murder. The government is facing renewed pressure to designate China a threat to national security after the naming of an alleged Chinese spy with close links to the Duke of York. And Scotland's former First Minister, Jose Yousaf, has announced that he's standing down as an MSP at the next election. He said that after 15 years in the Scottish Parliament, the time will be right for him to move on.
Do you send Christmas cards?
No, I don't. No.
Oh, you shouldn't say that in front of Amanda, because it's Amanda's job, actually. CEO Greetings Card Association. Mel, who's a journalist, no longer sending greeting cards this year. Make the case. Why not?
I am not sending Christmas cards after this year because I now receive so few. My mantelpiece would usually be pretty full at this time of year, but I think I've had 4 or 5 through the post.
Yeah.
And I now feel I'm a bit of a dinosaur sending them, to be honest. And also, am I making others send them to me when they really don't want to? I think there's other ways to keep in touch through the year. There's other ways to give to charity through the year. But it is with sadness, because I'm a traditionalist and yeah, I'd love this tradition to continue, but I feel postage costs and social media mean it's probably on its way out.
Amanda?
Well, it's certainly not on its way out, actually. And it's a very British tradition, you're right. We love sending and receiving greeting cards in this country. We send more cards per capita than any other country. So I've brought... You've got 5 now, Mel.
Thank you.
Kate, happy birthday. Happy birthday and happy Christmas.
I've got
I'm
2.
so sorry.
No, all right. Kate's doubled up.
But we love receiving them, don't we? And those messages that connect us to our friends and family from across the years, it's very special. It's a very special thing. And we use them to decorate our rooms. They're a key part of our Christmas decorations. And actually, interestingly, one of our members did some research last week again. We keep finding the same stats. Younger generation are sending more cards than they are a generation ago. And this has been happening over the last few years. Last week, Hallmark found that 63% of 18 to 34-year-olds are going to be sending more cards this year than they were before. So I think it's something tangible. It creates a very strong connection with your loved ones, and actually, it's a very special thing. I've brought some of my Christmas cards to show you today because actually, what we're doing in this country is spending more on individual cards.
Yeah.
So, for example, this card I went to school in Folkestone, and my best friend sent me that. And actually, that's great, because Folkestone's what we've got in common, whereas perhaps previously, a generation ago, she might have bought a pack of 100 cards, all the same to everyone. People are spending more on individual cards.
Pause for breath. Pause for breath.
Can I put them up?
You've done... Merry Christmas. Thank you so much. Your admin was fantastic there. But you kind of talk about the cost of the cards, picking up on what you said about the postage. There was an article in one of the papers last week, I think it was, that it was cheaper to fly abroad to post if you had kind of 60 or so letters to send. And that's a challenge for many people.
Yeah, absolutely. So the cost has risen, I believe it's 5 times in the last 3 years of a first-class stamp. It's now £1.65.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable, absolutely. And at this, in the cost of living crisis, which, is ongoing, that is an awful lot of money for people. And I think the reality is that people have to make choices, and maybe Christmas cards en masse have to go.
Yeah. Do you acknowledge £1.65 is an awful lot of money to send? Well, I think it's second-class post, last day, posting day to day.
Tomorrow.
Is it?
It's the 18th, actually. So, yes, it's tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, write them tonight and post them second class, because second class is only 85p. Yes. And actually, to get from Land's End to John O'Groats, I mean, that's not that expensive, isn't it? Is it? And, you add the price of the card in, you're still less than the price of a cup of coffee. And it's for someone else. What's not to like?
What about what we kind of do with them, though? Because like kind of looking at the messages that are in these cards, fairly short and sweet, but the traditional sending that annual roundup of the year, you did kind of get to know about other people's kind of family, because WhatsApp's great, but you send only 3 words or a couple of sentences. It did give that opportunity to catch up on all the bits and pieces, all the tittle-tattle from great aunt so-and-so that you didn't hear before. And that does get lost if maybe we don't do the Christmas card.
Well, I think that is true, but actually, I mean, I don't know about you, well, you don't send Christmas cards, but I don't get very long messages, and I would, if someone's had a tough year or is going through a difficult time, absolutely keep in touch with a card. But I think generally we know what's going on in our friends' lives. Social media, you know, has made that so much easier. And, you know, people show kindness in different ways throughout the year. It doesn't just have to be by writing lots of love in a Christmas card.
Is it a dying art to write? I mean, my son always writes both sides of a card for whether it's Christmas or my birthday or whatever. He always writes a note rather than just love mum. Love to mum or something. But it is a dying art, isn't it?
It's not.
There we go.
Actually, well, it's not, and I think it's really interesting seeing this young... Your son is quite typical of this younger generation because they're looking to ways to connect that's more meaningful. They're on social media all the time. You can't put a text on the mantelpiece, and actually, when you want to say something heartfelt to someone you really care about, it requires a bit of effort, and that's a card. And we're continuing to send more cards per capita than any other nation. We saw a growth in single card sales last year. We contribute £1.5 billion a year to the UK economy, and it's really, you know, it is a key creative industry. But we are reliant on a postal service that's reliable and affordable.
Absolutely.
And, you know, that's something that we are concerned about, although a lot of cards are hand-delivered.
We're thinking about kind of recipients and senders, but there's often another group involved in Christmas cards, and they're kind of charities. And it's hugely important to them, the sales of Christmas cards each year. You can see one there, for example, supporting money for charities, Mind, Shelter. How do we go about bridging that gap?
I agree with you in that I always buy charity Christmas cards, but I do think there's other ways of giving throughout the year. I do give in other ways throughout the year. There's always some debate over what percentage charities get, but of course it is a really important way for them to make money. But I think we all maybe need to look at ourselves throughout the year and check that we are contributing, you know, at different times.
What's the most popular Christmas card? Does it have puppies on it, or...?
It's very interesting. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I think the interesting thing is just the well, it's just the diversity, isn't it, of cards that we have and imagery. And actually, what we tend to do now is we choose an image and wording that suits us and actually the person that the recipient. And that's the key focus. But Father Christmas, snowmen. I mean, those snowy scenes, of course, go right back to the early Christmas cards. Victorian Christmas cards was very about. The first Christmas card was about the family and giving, and it showed charity, it showed the family getting together. So the traditions have come through.
We must leave it there, ladies. Fascinating stuff. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, much appreciated. Just want to bring you some breaking news on the row over the Chinese spy. A spokesperson for the Chinese embassy has been talking to us in London and has accused British MPs of having a twisted attitude towards China. That's after an alleged Chinese spy with close links to Prince Andrew was named as Yang Tengbo. Conservative MPs have called on the Prime Minister to take a tougher attitude towards China. The Chinese embassy accused them of arrogance and shamelessness. Look how quickly we got rid of those cards. Tell me more.
Well, as you said, we've just had a statement from a spokesperson for the embassy. It's quite a strong-worded statement, which I can read to you now. It starts by saying that we have noticed that the businessman has issued a statement to make clarification, and that's the statement essentially with Yang Tengbo saying that he hadn't done anything wrong and that he's been now wrapped up in a changing of the political climate. But it goes on to say, as for the anti-China clamours made by a handful of UK MPs, they have done nothing but fully reveal their twisted mentality towards China, and as well as their arrogance and shamelessness. It goes on to say that this is a typical case of the thief trying to catch thief. What they're really up to is to smear China, target against the Chinese community in the UK and undermine the normal personnel exchanges between China and the UK, adding that they strongly condemn this. Now, the statement does go on. It points out that that China is involved in cooperating with other countries, and that's why it says it has friends all over the world. And it also says that it wants to reiterate the fact that the United Front, led by the Chinese Communist Party, endeavours to bring together various political parties and people from all walks of life. So a very strong worded statement, Kay, from the Chinese embassy.
Yeah, for now. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you. Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you here on Sky News. Rising bills for customers and more complaints about sewage spills. All the while, water companies, they could soon go bust. We'll discuss what needs to change in the industry next.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime. They don't care for that. Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometres away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels. I've witnessed migration across Europe close up.
I'm James Matthews and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Washington, D.C. Mr. Musk, has your ignorance and ego cost Ukrainian lives? Free, wherever you get your news.
I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Why do you support Vladimir Putin, Mr. Seagal?
I'm Connor Gillis, Sky's Scotland correspondent. Sky News, the full story first.
Migrants risk their lives climbing aboard these trains in search of a dream, the United States.
It's really dangerous. They often get robbed on this train.
They suffer a lot by police, cartels.
What happens to them next, we just don't know. Do you miss your mum?
With Trump coming to the presidency, how much longer will people be accommodated?
The journey you've been through, it's been very difficult at times. Has it been worth it?
See. This is a journey which goes by one name, the Beast.
We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. Greg Milam, Sky News, Manchester.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Slide better.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to The Breakfast Show. Wednesday morning coming up. We will be talking about all sorts of things, including a Beatles song that I was being serenaded by this morning. That will all become clear in the fullness of time. Stay tuned for that. Meantime, Thames Water is hoping to win approval at the High Court later this morning for a £3 billion emergency loan to stop it running out of cash in the spring. Protests are expected outside the court, with the company under pressure to address growing costs and complaints over sewage outflows. Let's get more. Paul standing by for us. Hi, Paul. Morning.
Morning, Kay. Yeah, Thames Water in court. 10:30 the hearing begins, and it's an application by the company before a High Court judge to begin a restructuring plan that requires court approval, because the start of this plan is a £3 billion emergency loan at an eye-watering interest rate of nearly 10% that's being provided by the company's existing creditors. Thames Water has nearly £19 billion of debt in total. Well, the companies and debt providers who control about £12 billion of that debt, to try and protect their interests, are offering Thames this loan, which it says it needs to stop running out of money by the spring. But as a result of that loan, it's going to have what's called super senior status, which means it goes right to the front of the queue. In the event of a default, a collapse of the company, the first people to be repaid would be this £3 billion loan. That means that everybody else has to move down the queue, and that requires a higher court judge to give their approval. There's a hearing today at which some other creditors will oppose it. They say they can offer better terms. If the judge does give approval, there will be then a meeting of the creditors, in the new year, at which they will vote. Thames hope they will approve the plan. The money will then be provided. The company can at least keep going in the medium term while it sorts out the much bigger problem of its finances, most of which is around that enormous debt pile that's weighing it down. At some point, somebody is going to have to agree to lose some of that money to give Thames a chance of avoiding administration.
OK, for now, thank you. Separately, a watchdog has ruled the government and regulators broke the law by allowing water firms to discharge sewage into rivers and seas outside of exceptional circumstances. If steps aren't taken to rectify the situation, the government and regulators could face court action. Let's talk about it in more detail. Dr. Hugh McGaughey is here with us now, Professor of Law at King's College. Hi, it's good to see you. Thanks for taking the time to join us. Tell us what you're unhappy about.
Well, I think that all the Thames Water customers should be unhappy about what really is a prolonged bailout of the banks who are funding Thames Water. So this £3 billion loan that they're asking the High Court for approval of will come with an £800 million bill. So, that's quite a lot of interest, quite a lot of lawyers' fees. And if you work it out with 5.8 million Thames Water customers, that's about £263 per year over the 2.5-year loan for every customer that is using Thames Water. And this is on top of around 200 extra pounds a year that is paid to private water companies because we have a privatised system in England. So we've got such a broken system that the only thing that this is going to do is prolong the pain.
How did we get ourselves in this situation?
Well, since 1989, we've had privatisation of English water. We are exceptional in the world. So 90% of cities around the world have public ownership of water. It costs less. There can be more infrastructure investment. It doesn't have to be this way in England and Wales. What the government has the option to do, instead of the High Court approving this loan and continuing, is it can make companies that fail and pollute lose their licences. It can put them into special administration. And actually, the banks that are holding the water companies to ransom don't have to be bailed out in this way. Under special administration, the government can require banks to take a haircut, even down to zero, and that's especially the case if you take into account all the pollution. I mean, the other thing that's happened today is that the Office for Environmental Protection has found that DEFRA, Ofwat and the Environment Agency, under the last government particularly, has failed to act to stop pollution. So we're way down below the standards where we should be for clean water.
To what extent is that down to antiquated infrastructure?
Well, antiquated infrastructure comes from the lack of investment, and lack of investment comes from lots of money, £85.2 billion since privatisation, going in shareholder returns. So if you look at capital expenditure versus shareholder returns, you'd see that there could be about 40% more investment in infrastructure if we didn't have to pay private shareholders and banks like the ones that are asking for this extra £3 billion loan now. So there could also be reduced bills. You can take that 40% and use it for whatever you want. But that's why we've got some of the worst water outcomes in Europe. We're below Albania now in terms of our drinking water. Even at the White Cliffs of Dover, you've got sewage. It's becoming different coloured Cliffs of Dover at the moment.
Goodness. Thank you very much indeed, Doctor, for explaining that to us. Thank you. A quick look at the weather for you now this morning here on Sky News. It's going to be mild if unsettled for the next couple of days, but it'll turn colder on Thursday. It's mainly dry and fairly mild now, but rain is spreading across Ireland, Northern Ireland and also northern Scotland. It's going to be mostly wet this morning, with the rain turning more patchy over Ireland, while southern Scotland and northern England will see outbreaks of rain becoming widespread. Wales and the bulk of England, meanwhile, look mainly dry. It'll be windy in the west with coastal gales, but will stay very mild. Ireland and Northern Ireland will see heavier, more general rain. Gang, are all here. Do you think that the Lib Dem leader will be #1 at Christmas?
I think it would be very nice, but potentially unlikely.
Good for the causes, maybe not so good for the other, slightly more serious entries.
Maybe not good for our ears.
I think the children have a good shot. The kids were cute.
Let's have a listen. Nah, I can't see it myself. Apparently, there's been a surge in people downloading it, but...
It reminds me of the story in Love Actually of Bill Nye, you know, an aged rocker. His final throws.
Yeah.
Oh, hope Ed Davey doesn't mind me saying
Good
that.
morning, Fred.
It's almost his birthday, as you rightly pointed out.
Yeah,
He loves to go
Christmas
nice
Day.
this time of year.
Of his music career, I meant.
Yeah.
He's obviously
Right,
got a lot
okay.
more life left in him generally.
His actual birthday is on Christmas Day.
It is.
Yeah.
It would be a lovely Christmas present for him.
It would.
It would
It's
indeed.
my actual birthday today, and this is the song that the producer, Andrew, was singing to me when I came in this morning.
Will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64? And every summer we could take a cottage in the Isle of Wight if it's not too dear. You'll be older too.
A lot of lip gloss, that, isn't it?
Just the right amount.
Yeah, there I am. Wasn't expecting that. I just thought I was going to hear the music,
No,
but
no.
yeah.
That's the poor man joy of quite a lot of time on television, hey? There's plenty to bring back to you.
Yeah, now I'm 64. He was cheeky, wasn't he?
Yeah, but it's totally inappropriate. You haven't aged a day.
As
Not
I always-
even close to looking 64.
As I always say, I'm a tribute to my plastic surgeon.
Yeah. We're huge fans.
Yeah. And these were made for me, special. Do you want to try one?
Amaretti. So there's
Amaretti.
almond, there's egg,
Made.
and there's sugar. That's your intolerances list, if you so.
You made it?
Yeah, I made it.
Okay, I've got to try one
These
now.
look like very difficult things to eat on TV. I feel like we're slightly stitched up here.
That's right, at the end of the hour.
Just go for it.
You're going to go for it?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, exactly. It's Christmas.
Exactly.
I'm going to, for your birthday, Kate, I'm going to humiliate myself by eating this huge lump of white
I do
powder.
it every day.
Let's just icing
gonna
sugar.
go all
Icing
over
sugar.
my
Let's just
face.
qualify that.
Yeah,
shall we?
You're going to get like a reaction in real time.
Good, aren't they?
Yep. Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, yeah. Did you?
Yep.
Great.
Correct
Absolutely.
answer.
Yeah,
Delicious.
Correct answer.
You?
Yeah, it's a lot of icing.
And a lot of sugar.
There is a lot of sugar,
Yeah.
but there's a little bit of almond essence in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Delicious.
Look at that.
Absolutely delicious. We
Heavy
have.
on the icing.
We've made a huge mess.
Oh yeah, they're not diabetic friendly at all.
Let me tell you, while you're eating that, I'll entertain you with a surprise pitch invasion. And you could say it's left one poor rugby player looking like a deer in the headlights. Oops, there you go. A stoppage in play in a local derby match, and a small deer, I think it's a muntjac.
It is a
isn't
muntjac.
Yeah.
It is a muntjac.
Sprints onto the pitch to bring one of the players right down to earth. There you go. Onlookers weren't overly concerned.
I think that person's wearing a single figure on the back of their jerseys. That means they're in the
Wait.
scrum. And they've been taken down by muntjac, which weigh about 15 kilos, which doesn't really say much for their size performance over the game, does it? Although, fun
Great
fact,
analysis.
they have tusks, do muntjac deer.
Yes.
They have long canine teeth that they used to fight with rather than their antlers.
Yeah,
my
sometimes
little
they
fun
have
fact
to
for
do
you.
that when they're being chased by Irish setters.
I also got Lyme disease from muntjac deer, so I'm not a massive fan of them.
Tell the story about my doggie before we let these
this
lovely people go.
This is one of my favourite videos. Kay sends me a WhatsApp of the video, and there's your Irish setters kind of playing in the countryside, and all you hear is this very innocent voiceover that goes, "Have you got a lovely little stick?" And it does, it looks like a little stick, and as the dog gets closer and closer and closer, you discover it's actually the leg of a deer.
Oh
that
my
is- But it was the
goodness.
innocence, it was the innocence of the lovely little stick.
Yeah, I couldn't publish it because obviously people would have been upset, and quite rightly too. He didn't kill it.
Didn't kill it, no. He just found it.
Yes, exactly.
Waves and strays.
Okay.
What a sweet story to end on.
On a sweet note, bear with me.
Happy Christmas, everyone.
Exactly that. No, we are still here for another couple of days, aren't we? But we will see you... Oh, we've got 30 seconds to go. Should I let you?
No, don't mind me.
OK.
I'm very busy.
Yeah, bit of Paul McCartney. And we will see you tomorrow at 6 and 7
6 and
o'clock. Is it you tomorrow as well?
Unfortunately not.
OK.
No, that's why we're in green today. It's my last shift.
But I'll be
before
watching.
Christmas.
I'll be watching, as always.
OK. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you.
Will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64? And every summer we could take a cottage in the Isle of Wight if it's not too dear. You'll be older too. And if you simply say the word, well now I will stay with